please rise, pledge allegiance after silent invocation.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Ford?
Present.
Member Trayvon?
Here.
Member Phillips?
Here.
Vice Mayor Basham?
Here.
Mayor Burnett?
I'm here. We got a very long list of discussion items, there being only one. Somehow I don't think that'll be reflective of the length of the meeting, though. Item 4, discussion on feral cat TNR program. Jake, what you got for us?
Sir, as you're aware, and I think everybody else is, we're here for the Feral Cat Workshop to discuss the way ahead. A little bit of background. The program, as you know it, has been in existence since 2011. The program, affectionately known as the Trap, Neuter, Release Program, but I think it's a little bit bigger than that, the Feral Cat Program. It's a program where the TNR portion of it, where unowned cats are trapped, neutered, marked, and then brought back to the general location were found to live out their lives. This program has been successful for those cats that have been trapped, neutered, and returned, but not met the current mandate from council to decrease the number of feral cats. As far as I can tell, that was the mandate back in 2011 as well. I also have concerns from a fiscal perspective, which is why I think we took care of the suspending it in the budget until we could come to a point that we're at today. I've asked for data that supports and justifies the cost of the TNR program to see if it was adequate to meet the mandate that you last gave or council last gave in 2017. I have anecdotal evidence that cats other than those from Port Orange are being neutered using Port Orange tax dollars, which concerns me. The city passively monitors the program right now, which I have determined is not in the best interest of our tax dollars. And Mayor, might I add that it's something that just can't adequately withstand a fiscal audit. I can't go to James Moore and show them where the dollars flow and how they flow with reasonable clarity. I asked our Assistant City Manager, Alan Rosen, and a special assistant to compile data on as many aspects of the feral cat program and the control across the nation. We also reached out to approximately, I think it was about 1/3, if not a little more, of our colonies in our city, some of which are active, some of which are inactive. Alan will present some info and recommendations to you this evening. At the end of the day, you'll see that we probably need more staff control of the use of resources. That's money and time, and traps, if you will, and an orderly reduction of colonies so we can better track and account for feral cats. Depending on who you talk to, we have anywhere between 200 and 300 colonies, active or not. That's too many for us to account for and audit. I would recommend at the end of this, and Alan will bring you some detailed recommendations, a 5 to 7 year plan to go down to approximately 5 per district for a total of 20 in the city. That is something that 2.5 FTE of animal control officers can probably go visit, audit, and adequately help. Alan will show you some recommendations to get us there. And I'd like everybody to know, and there's a lot of people here that support the TNR program and work with us. Please don't think that the city doesn't care about what you do. We all very much care, and we need your continued support even after this following workshop and whatever comes of a council meeting. We very much appreciate everything CCFAW, UCF, UF here tonight, Halifax Humane, and Redinger Clinic has done for us. So having said that, I think I'll allow Alan to proceed with the details in the presentation.
I was thinking too, as Alan gets prepared to do that, I just want to set the expectation for everybody this evening, how we're going to proceed, so that everybody knows that right now, this is a workshop. This is not a regular council meeting, so there are no binding decisions that are going to be made here tonight. We're going to intake information. We're going, as a council, we're going to process that information. Our goal is to make good policy in regards to the city's feral cat program that is fiscally sustainable, and certainly a program that can survive the perils of an audit. That anything that we do, an auditor has to be able to come in and say, yes, this program is being executed in a manner where things have the proper accountability. And some of those holes created some of the that we have in the current program that we suspended were some of the things that created issues that with staff that needed to be addressed and fixed. So that's part of our goal tonight. We're going to hear from a lot of people. Staff is going to make a presentation. There'll be they've also talked to a lot some experts that are going to present to us. A number of people want to speak, and that's fine. That will happen. It's going to happen later on in the meeting. Usually the council will, after we've heard our presentations, we'll have some discussion amongst ourselves. We will ask a lot of questions of those presenters. After that's happened, then we'll go to public participation. Keep in mind, if you can help us, because I do expect that this meeting, because it's got a lot of substance to it, will have some length to it. So just everybody who wants to speak can speak, and will get their 3 minutes. But I ask you that if you try to stay on mark as best as possible. If you only need a minute to say what you have to say, take a minute and leave that time for somebody else, so that we can be more efficient as we go over the course of the evening. Everybody out there and everybody up here is going to have their fannies in seats for quite a while. So what I want to be able to do is make sure that we move along at a pace that will allow us to make good decisions by the end of the night. After we hear from the public, then it's going to come back to council for some discussion. We may have follow-up questions with some of our experts here based on some of the things we've heard from the public. But this is as a workshop. At the end of the night, we're going to try to come to some kind of consensus so that we can give staff some direction to form a policy. Now, they'll come back with that policy statement at a later date in a council meeting for us to make a decision. But in the meantime, before they can even create policy, they certainly have recommendations for us, but we can't proceed with that out of a workshop. This is just a informational session, and we're going to do our very best to try to stay on task. We ask that everybody that speaks tonight, experts included, do the same. Let's be efficient with our time and our words so that we can make this as productive and effective as possible. Councilor, any opening comments before we go to staff, or are we all ready to listen? All right, Mr. Rosen. It took you 4 seconds to get up here. That's not a very good use of time. Come on, let's go.
Apparently I'm so boring before I even spoke, he left. Doesn't set a good precedent for me, I guess.
I told you, no PowerPoints after a certain time of night. Is that why we're starting early?
That's only 5:24, yeah. I will try to set the pace tonight and make this as brief as possible, knowing that there's a lot of people who'd like to speak on this subject. Alan Rosen, Assistant City Manager, and we'll try to get through it. So basically the goal of any TNR program, including ours, is to reduce the size of the feral cat population. That's why this thing was put into place, and that's our goal as well. So I'm just going to go through, based on the research that I and some other staff had done over the last couple of months, we came up with about 10 recommendations based on the information we found, based on the research that we read, based on the people in the community that we talked to who are stakeholders in this process. including HHS, CCFAW, and others as well. And so I'm just going to briefly go through these recommendations. And I used to live in New York, so I talk pretty fast. So if I'm talking too fast, just let me know. I'm trying to get through it quickly.
What are you trying to tell me just because I was born in the South?
Just that I talk fast, or I can. So the first recommendation is to adopt a contract with the Redinger Clinic. The Redinger Clinic is a function of Halifax Humane Society. It's a kind of a different office. That's where all of in our program, if we continue to do TNR, and where we have it when we do TNR and we pay for those go through the Redinger Clinic. So they get neutered and they get vaccinated, and that's where we do all of that work. And right now we do about $17,000 worth of work with them a year. Just depends on the volume. But in order to better understand, the roles and responsibilities of both us and the organization that we work with, it really would be better to have a contract in place so we can make sure, especially as the city manager mentioned, if we have an audit, the auditor can go back to the contract and say, okay, this is what was the price, this is what those roles, responsibilities, everything was done according to contract, everything checks out. So that would be the first recommendation. If we're going to do,
Alan, just clarify for me, because is Halifax Humane Society and Redinger one organization, or is it two organizations together?
Halifax Humane Society I don't want to say owns, but controls Redinger. It's one of their programs.
So it's two separate organizations? No.
It's one organization. We do actually have a contract with Halifax Humane Society for another if we find stray animals that are not part of this program, some of them are brought to Halifax Humane Society. So we do have a contract for that portion. We do not have a contract for the neutering and the vaccinations that go through the Redinger Clinic.
Okay.
That's the portion I'm talking about. Another recommendation would be to do a mandatory periodic colony census. And this would be something similar to every year throughout the United States, we do point-in-time counts for the homeless. We do census counts for the United States. And that's so the government can understand how many of whatever it is you're trying to service are around. Right now, as part of the program, there's really no counting of how many cats are in each of the colonies. So if you ask me today how many cats are in each of the colonies, I cannot tell you. And as they do in the census and they do in point-in-time count homeless, you get a sense over time of how these things are going. So it's not just you count them once and then you're done. Over time, you can see the changes in population and know how many cats are in each location. This is something that is actually done very regularly. Of the research that I've read, there's different kinds of research that's done on TNR. One of the kinds of research, and some of the one that was actually done from University of Florida at UCF and in Alachua County, they would actually go to they would have people involved in the study and go to those colonies and count the cats over time and find out, did the cats disappear? Are they in the woods? Are they at another colony? And so this is something that's done regularly on a regular basis to determine whether TNR was actually effective anyway. So it is done and it is out there, and it's something that we should do. If you want us to let you know whether or not it's working, that's something that we need to do.
In regards to that, is it, one of the big questions I'll have tonight from both points of view is how do you measure, how do you define success? Is it at all possible to determine any amount of success without having numbers going in the first place?
Without having numbers going in the first place, you don't even know how many you started with. So you have to get a number of kind of how many you have and is it changing over time. There were some people who felt there were other measures of success, and there are other ways to measure it, like how many cats are being euthanized, how many cats are coming in for TNR, how many of the colonies are actually active versus not active. But in looking at kind of the standard of point-in-time homeless counts or the census from the United States and other countries is you have to, if I was going to say to you, I'm going to tell you whether or not it's working by looking at how many cats are neutered this year, how many cats went to HHS this year, or how many cats were coming into the colonies versus the ones that are already there. It's like saying, I'm going to tell you how many people are living in the state of Florida by just telling you how many people immigrated to this state. I don't care how many live there. I don't care how many died there or how many were born there. I'm just going to tell you how many moved there. In order for me to tell you how many people live in the state of Florida, I have to do a census of all the people in the state of Florida, not just how many people moved there, were born there, were dying there. That's only kind of one part of it. Again, it's not the end-all be-all. It's not the only thing you should measure, but it's something that we don't measure, and it would give us a better indication of all the colonies over time, are they increasing, are they decreasing? And then we could come and tell you the colonies are increasing, they're decreasing, and give you a better indication of why or why not it's working and what we could do to tweak the program and make it better. So the next recommendation would be to insource management of the TNR program. I kind of put a little diagram up here, and it kind of gives you an idea of, city does hundreds of programs. So what do you insource, what do you outsource? This isn't the only way to think about what you would do or how you would insource, outsource something, but it gives you an idea. If you look in the top right-hand column, you've got insource. That would be your idea. That's if the program that you have is very important to you, important to the organization, and you want to have a more control or effectiveness over the program, it would be something you would think about more of insourcing. If it's a program that's really not important and control of the program really doesn't matter to you, then it'd be something that you outsource. But based on the information and the obviously the support of the community of something that we do, this is something that is a big deal. And so if you want to have more control over the program and be able to provide more resources to it, I'd recommend that you insource some management of this program. In talking to community stakeholders, including CCFAW and Daytona Beach, and before we even got into this, I think some of you also know that Daytona Beach kind of insourced some of the management of their program. They hired somebody, they have somebody part-time that only works on this issue. And the people that I've spoke with in Daytona Beach and outside of the organization have felt that that has drastically improved their ability to manage their program. So that would be a recommendation here as well.
Which I think, leave that chart up there for just a second, Alan.
Sure.
I've seen a similar chart, and there's one line that goes through it diagonally, starting from low to high, called cost.
Yes.
And that you could easily put that in there and draw that through there diagonally.
Yeah, one of the downsides, you hit that on the head. One of the downsides, obviously, to insourcing, especially in this instance, is your costs are going to increase, right? Because right now you could outsource to an organization that's going to charge you. Right now, you outsource to an organization that's a volunteer organization, so they don't charge you to do any of this. So that's the downside of insourcing, is you're going to pay more, but you're going to have more control over the program. I did have the grants manager look at, and we'll talk about some money a little bit later. I had the grants manager research grants that governments can get for these type of programs. And the two that she found, the Petco Foundation has a grant annually or biannually of $10,000, and the Bissell Pet Foundation has a grant that they can award to governments for also $10,000 annually or semi-annually. So it doesn't pay for the entire thing, but if we did insource the program and did have some internal expenditures above and beyond the current neutering and spaying that we do, this could help pay for the cost of the program internally. So the next recommendation would be to require training for colony caregivers. And so right now, we as a city don't do any training for colony caregivers. This is actually done in other programs around the United States. New York City has a program where if you want to be a part of the TNR program, you have to go through their training session. It's basically like a half-a-day session, and they go over stuff that's typical to the program. It covers the resources that are available to them, how to care for outdoor colony cats, how to make sure, and spot diseases that may be occurring that they can take care of, because they're supposed to manage, make sure that these cats are healthy. Make sure and understand, feeding, when you should be feeding, how much should you be feeding so that you're not attracting other wildlife. How to notice whether or not you're getting an immigration influx of cats that you need to take care of, because sometimes cats will come into colonies that are not fixed, and if you don't recognize it right away, those cats can continue breeding, especially if you're providing them nutrients. You need to get to them right away so that they don't continue to have kittens.
I just want to, you'll probably say it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it for you.
Chickens?
Maybe you won't say it. I don't know.
Oh.
I just know in our conversation about this, that these are one of the things that we would look at to make a program pass muster with an audit for accountability purposes.
You could?
Well, say yeah, because
Yes.
we talked about it. But granted, it was a month ago, but
Yeah.
I took good notes.
Okay. And the other thing to kind of connect this to is that we actually already do this for another program that we have with animals. So a year or two ago, the city implemented a backyard chicken program. In order to be in that program, you have to go through the training program. We don't do this for the cats, and we have 300 cat colonies. Granted, some are inactive, some have no cats at all, but it would help provide better care for the cats if we did provide that program and be able to provide better information for the people doing it, so that they understand, what they need to do to make sure to take care of the cats and control the colony. And it's being done by other organizations, so we wouldn't be the only one doing it.
Well, one of the biggest issues that I have right now with our current status is that there's little accountability. I would imagine that this would be the primary means of being able to hold folks accountable that are not doing it up to the current level of standard that we would suggest.
Yeah, CCFAW does have some program material that they make people sign in the current program, and it says, here's what you need to be doing, and here's what you shouldn't be doing, and let us know if you need help. They do have that in place, but it would be part of the program if we added additional resources in-house to help CCFAW with the management of the program. We could have that sheet that they would sign as well to say, here are the things that you need to make sure you're doing. If you're not doing it as a responsible owner, then you're not going to be part of the program. So yes. The next recommendation would be to adopt a feeding ordinance. There's actually, and this is a picture of the Target parking lot in Port Orange of rogue feeding. Rogue feeding is basically not part of the TNR program. It's where people go out and just throw out the food, and cats come if they see cats there. They may not be aware of the program. The downside to this, obviously, is if people are feeding cats that are not fixed, there's something called a carrying capacity, which is Mother Nature's way of saying, that's it, you can't have any more of this species because there's not enough resources in the area. And if you don't fix the animal and you provide more resources, now they're able to have more cats more often, right? So it just contributes to the problem. And I've even spoken to people that work with volunteers at CCFAW who indicate this is a problem. But the problem is they have no teeth. We have no teeth because we have no ordinance. If they catch somebody and they confront that person and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, maybe you should be part of the program and do it properly. And if the person, let's say, gives them attitude or whatever, they have no recourse to even call the city and say the person's rogue feeding. We don't have an ordinance that can help them help themselves or help other people be responsible. So this is also not something new. There are 6 other cities in Volusia County that have this. It's Holly Hill, New Smyrna, Ormond, Ponce Inlet, Edgewater, and South Daytona. In addition, often a program that was often mentioned, and I called them as well and talked to them at length, is the Feral Freedom Program in Duval and Jackson County. They also have a restrictive feeding ordinance. Now, all of these restrictive feeding ordinances have a carve-out for TNR. So if you become part of the program and you're a registered colony caregiver, you can still feed as is allowable to make sure that you're doing it correctly. But those people that are just going out and throwing food out and littering and collecting, other wild animals that may be attracted, that's the thing that would not be allowed. The other recommendation is to increase penalties for pet abandonment. Just for purposes of space, we have first, second, third offense in our ordinances. This is controlled by state law. State law has a maximum, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's $5,000 and court. Second degree misdemeanor?
First degree.
First degree misdemeanor, yeah. So
Where did the extra $3 come from?
I don't know.
Only in Port Orange could we do something like that.
So as you can see here by this list, we did a survey of a couple of cities. This is what we got back. We're kind of on the lower end of this list, at least within Volusia County. So if it's something that the council wanted to think about, we have room for movement. It's up to you how far you want to go up. But some of the arguments for and against this kind of stuff is, well, what's the point of having it on there? You're not going to catch anybody anyway. My kind of feeling is that the argument there is, well, we might as well not have a speed limit because you're not going to catch anybody anyway. The argument just doesn't make any sense. You got to have the sticks and the carrots there in place. And, the thing is not to just change it, but if we were going to change it, to publicize it and get it out there, right. Because there maybe we reach 5 or 6 more people who will think twice about abandoning their pet or being cruel to their animal before they do it because our fines are so high out there. Now, again, the point is not to make money, it's to prevent people from trying to do this. And the reason you want to prevent pet abandonment, when you read the studies and you talk to the people, one of the biggest immigration, when cats come into cat colonies, one of the biggest reasons for immigration is because of pet abandonment. So you want to try to reduce it at all costs, and this is one tool you have available to you, for you to do that. Another one is a lot of times in anecdotal information and people that I talk to, a lot of the abandonment happens at apartments. because that's more your transient community, right? They get a pet, they're a student or whatever, they bring the pet in, they can't bring it to their next place, they leave it there or they let it out the door. And a lot of times those pets are not neutered. Again, causing immigration to, they're going to go and find where the food is. They're going to go to that colony, they're going to find the food, and if the other cats let them, they're going to start eating the food too. And if the owner doesn't notice, they're just going to keep on feeding, and they're going to have enough food there for the cats. And so if that cat has not been spayed or neutered, now it's creating more of a problem because that cat is going to start breeding as well. So landlords, generally, when you go and rent a place, if they allow pets, they also request a pet deposit, right? So in that situation, we would say we would like to go there and tell them, hey, look, we would really like you to do this. We would really like you, if you're going to allow pets, require that your residents come to you with your spay and neuter documentation so that you can see it's been spayed or neutered, so that if, God forbid, it does get abandoned, at least it's not contributing to the problem above and beyond that one pet. And so hopefully, my recommendation is not to mandate this at this point, but to try to educate and try to get them to comply without creating new laws for them to follow. And hopefully that will help. And then, of course, above and beyond that, if council wants to go above and beyond that, they can.
I'll be honest, I'm looking and seeing how low of a fine that is for animal abandonment. I mean, I'd be willing to go fine someone $5,000 for abandoning an animal.
Yeah. So for
That's a no-brainer.
yeah, so for spay and neuter, and the other thing is, in your city ordinance, you mandate that people that have a pet in the city of Port Orange, unless there's some certain reasons, they have to be spayed or neutered. So this kind of really falls along with, if you're going to allow pets in your rental property, they really should be spayed and neutered. Right now, it's not their mandate to check that; it's the owner's mandate to do it. But this will help, hopefully, make sure that more of those pets that are in these places are spayed and neutered. This is something I actually got an idea from the Feral Freedom Program in Jacksonville. They increased their pet license fee at some point in the distant past to help pay for their TNR program. So right now we charge between $3 and $5 to get your pet license every year. And we have not changed that since 1990. 30 years, we have not increased that. There are other cities in the county that charge nothing. There are other cities in the county that charge $15. There are other cities in the state that charge $20, $25, $30. And this is annually. And so if we look at, I just ran some numbers just to see how much we could raise to support the TNR program. If we raise the fee between like $10 and $15 from $3 and $5, we could raise an additional $4,000 a year to help. I mean, it's a little bit, but it's something. And part of the people that we talked to a lot of people that are in the program, and they said, I'd go right now and start licensing more pets, because if I knew that additional money was going to the TNR program, I would definitely be in support of that. Because what I was worried about is, economics, right? How elastic is this thing? If you raise the price, are people going to do it, right? Because there are a lot of pet owners out there, people that we talk to, that do not license their pets. A lot of them are cats because they're indoors, and people think, well, nobody's going to catch me, so why license? If you look at the list of pets that are licensed, 99% are dogs. So people, even with cats, said, I'd go right now and license my pet because I knew it was going to this program.
Question, Alan, and
Yeah.
forgive my interruption. I just want to ask, while
Yeah.
I still have it on my brain as you're going through, but I'm curious as how many people are actually paying these permits? Because I'll be honest, this kind of goes back to our conversation the other night about what we need permits for. I didn't know until just tonight that you needed a permit to own a pet. I wonder how many people are actually paying the permit to do that?
I got the list. Jake had requested the list a long time ago, and I had gotten the list. I don't have it. 400 maybe. Jake, do you remember?
No, I can pull it up by the time this thing's over.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that probably goes along with what we come out of, what we talked about, whatever we do is going to require a public information campaign.
Yeah.
That should be part of it. The total number of animals allowed per house, I think, is 4.
4.
That should be, I don't know what that does to people who own fish, but
I don't think that
we'll talk
counts.
about that separately. But those are the kinds of things that we have on the books that, if all of us up here are not fully up to speed about, I can't expect the average citizen to be. So yeah, those need to be components of a public information program.
Yeah, and this is nothing new. I
Approximately
think
420.
420. Oh, I was close. My memory didn't fail me too bad. And that's pretty common. I've lived all over the United States, and everywhere I've ever gone, if you get a pet, the license is required. And generally, what that relates to is rabies vaccination. Generally, it comes with the rabies vaccination because that was really the biggest problem. It wasn't so much the spay and neutering, but organizations wanted to make sure that the cats were vaccinated and dogs were vaccinated, ferrets were vaccinated, so that they didn't get rabies and spread the disease, and that's where it came about. There were other examples I came upon, specifically Jacksonville, who does their licensing very differently, and they have a lot more licenses that they sell based on the way they do it, because it kind of almost mandates requirement. Like when you get a pet, you're going to get that license. If you don't get that license, the city's going to know, and they're going to come after you, not only for the amount of license, but for a fee because you didn't do it. The reason I did not put that in here as a recommendation is because it takes a lot more oversight, and I didn't want to go there yet. But there are ways to do it to get more people in that.
By the way, of the 420, 11 of them are cats.
Right. Exactly. And I know that there are more than 11 pet cats in the city of Port Orange. So the last time we met, somebody had mentioned a recommendation of putting something on the water bill for allowing donations for the TNR program. Personally, I didn't like that specifically because there wasn't really a nexus between the two. And the city runs hundreds of programs that are well deserving for people to give extra money to if they wanted to. Why specifically that one? So when I was talking to the Feral Freedom Program in Jacksonville, they said, well, in addition to kind of really mandating people get these licenses, we also put something on the license if people wanted to donate to the TNR program. That's where we put it. And they said we got a lot of money from that as well. So if we wanted to do that, I would say there's a really big nexus there. Again, you're not going to get as much people with eyes on it because you don't have so many people registering their pets. But if we did this education program and got more people registered, again, you would just have more money for the program going forward. And the last one, good old Bob Barker. I miss that guy. A low-cost spay and neuter program. So
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You work during the day. You're not supposed to be watching that.
This was when I was a kid, when I was supposed to be in school.
Skipping work and school.
Yeah. So he would always say at the end, and I was looking for this, help control the pet population, have your pet spayed or neutered. So this is obviously a big thing, and part of the programs that I saw that were very positive and effective throughout the country is having some sort of programs for low-cost spay and neuter. And not necessarily that the city has to pay for it, but we can also be a force and a driver in the community to work with vets, to work with other organizations, even to help them find money to kind of coordinate these programs where people can go for low cost to get their pets spay and neutered. Some people will say, it's interesting, I've had a lot of conversations obviously about this over the last 2-3 months, right? And some of the ones we talk about, there's similarities between other things that go on in society. There's programs where you have needle exchanges and places where you can clean needles, and people are like, well, why should I support that? People shouldn't be taking drugs. And on the other end, it's like, well, they're going to be doing it anyway, so at least we can hopefully make them healthier and not get horrible diseases. So the same argument I've heard of, why should I pay for somebody who can't afford a pet for their pet to get spayed and neutered? Well, you know what? They're going to get a pet anyway. And so to have a program available to them, regardless of whether we pay for it or we can help get a low-cost spay or neuter program in place, this will at least help them get that pet spay or neutered so that if it does make it outside, it does not contribute to the feral cat population. So that's all I got. I'm sorry it took a little over 10 minutes. And we can hear from others. You can ask me questions. I can come back later.
Who you got after this, Alan?
I know CCFAW is here. I think we've got some researchers from the University of Florida and from some other programs, maybe Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else that's from an organization that I had contacted? Oh, I'm sorry, Halifax Humane, of course. I'm sorry. Are there any other organizations that were here that I had contacted who wanted to speak? I think I covered everybody.
Why don't you orchestrate them up there one by one?
Do you guys want to come up first? And then, so we'll do HHS. Who are the researchers?
UF.
UF?
We're with the University of Florida.
Yes.
Yep.
That's UF, right?
That's it.
Yes,
Okay.
our researchers, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll let them introduce themselves so I don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up. My
yes.
son is a gator, okay?
CCFAW? And who else? About from like the city of Daytona perspective? Okay. And then that's it, we're good?
Make it hard.
Got it, okay. So that'll be the order, so you can come up right after them, so I
Rock
don't
and
have to
roll.
get back up. Let me get out of this.
Hey, Miguel.
How's it going? Miguel Abi Hassan, Halifax Humane Society. I'm actually going to keep it very short. More than anything, I wanted to say thank you for the research, the questions, your interests. I hope that we've received your support in continuing the program. I have two wonderful speakers that are going to follow my quick introduction. I want to let you know that in the world of animal welfare, there are two leaders in the thought movement of the best practices that are out there, and that's essentially UCLA and University of Florida. And the great news is they actually work together. So we have two of their consultants that they send into communities in matters where they have these kind of discussions. And it's full of great news today. These two consultants are actually both from Florida. One of them started one of the biggest programs that's already been referenced tonight out of Jacksonville, and they are familiar with all the other citations and programs that you've heard of. And the other is Dr. Sarah Pisano, who is leading author in best practices, but also a consultant that has been to over 100 municipalities and has saved over 50,000 cats from entering animals in just 1 year. Actually, I believe it's in just 3 months.
To decrease euthanasia of dogs and cats
Mhm.
by 50,000 in 18 shelters.
In 18 shelters. So with that, I'll let Dr. Sarah Pisano introduce herself and camera and more. Thank you.
so much. Thank you.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you so much. I'm excited. You're my favorite group of people to talk to. That's because truly, I've been in animal welfare for 30 years. I've been a shelter veterinarian for 25. Part of my career I spent as the director in Miami-Dade Animal Services. So I had enforcement and all the things that entail working in a shelter as well. I had 13 commissioners. We rewrote our code, so I'm very familiar with the challenges that you all face and the decisions that you have to make. Since 2013, I've been doing assessments around the United States, like Miguel shared, over 100 assessments. And when we started doing these assessments and introducing best practices, we said, is it going to work in the northwest part of the United States in high poverty rates and low poverty rates? And it turns out that the challenges are the same, but so are the solutions. And I only have good news for you, starting with responsible public policy. So we heard some ideas tonight, but part of what we do is create and help council update public policy. So I've already taken the liberty of redlining your ordinance and that I will share with you. We work with the National Animal Welfare Attorneys, which we're happy to link you with. We have common language, and that's a really easy way to educate you on the best practice ordinance revisions to set you up for success. Because I can promise you what we found in every single community is we have these goals, which we all share. We want less cats outside. But the way that we approach that topic can vary and get you way off track. And my goal for you is to use your resources strategically, whether it's your funding, whether it's grant money. Our team, Cameron and I, have been successful in getting our shelters over $4 million in funding, including spay-neuter funding. But the bottom line is you have a lot of other responsibilities. Get this one off your list. So I'm going to give you kind of a few minutes snapshot of this problem. The problem is that cats are brilliant at reproducing, and number two is Americans. We estimate about half of Americans allow their cats access to the outside. The reason your brains trigger to ferals and colonies is because that's when everybody gets into trouble, right? So now there's complaints and they go to elected officials, and there's a lot of everybody gets into trouble. But the truth is, less than 5% of these community cats are actually feral. There are cats that we let in and out, but maybe we didn't have access to spay neuter. Maybe we didn't know we should spay neuter, and they reproduce exponentially. So what we propose is the only way to decrease the numbers and reduce not only colony numbers, but prevent colonies, is to sterilize, vaccinate against rabies, ear tip, and put a cat back where they're already cared for. So the issue about feeding and the rogue feeding, we incorporate that language. This is about respectful partnerships and respecting all stakeholders, not just cat lovers, but dog lovers, wildlife advocates, the council, right? So it's about respectful feeding. So there should be systems in place. What I don't want to see you do is use resources in ways that are not achieving your goal. By registering colonies, by trying to count cats, that Alachua study that Alan referenced, that was a study so that we can use formulas to extrapolate how many cats there are. There's $1 million study going on right now in Washington, D.C. to count cats, but that's not a normal thing that we do because we know the resources, the finite resources that we have, should be used to sterilize, and we drop numbers. So what happens, and how do you measure success? Enforcement calls. That's what's going to be important for you. And you're going to hear, probably, I don't know if Bob is speaking, you're going to hear how they already reduced their enforcement calls by 50%. Every organization we work with, enforcement calls are drastically decreased. Shelter intake. That's another indicator as well. But again, when we sterilize, it benefits everybody. Remember, as we are transporting cats, for example, to the shelter, everyone's reproducing right behind them, and nobody's vaccinated against rabies. But when we stop the reproduction and we vaccinate those cats, we increased our community immunity against rabies. That's what you should be interested in as public officials, right? Your job in this arena is public and animal safety. This is the only way to do that. So again, we have been doing assessments every other week, essentially writing reports for all these animal control and animal welfare organizations. So I published the best practice playbook. There's a chapter on legislation and what to put in your ordinance and what not to put in your ordinance. I'm going to give this to the mayor to share with everyone, and I'm also going to leave my card here for all of you so that you know how to reach me. But we have found that now in the United States, certainly you're on an island, everyone around you is doing not just TNR, but the community cat program from the shelter and putting cats back where they're already cared for. It's happening all over Florida, all over the United States. Yet the CDC is reporting that the incidence of rabies in cats is going down. And there's never been a program that said, oh, we're going to go back to just trapping them or doing these other measures. But again, I would caution you to use your resources very wisely. And now that we are here, we have awarded this pro bono assessment to Halifax Humane Society. We help for a year, so we're here to help you. We're here to connect you with like leaders, with national animal welfare attorneys to set you on the right course. You have an estimated 16,000 cats outside here in just the city of Port Orange. So remember, if you put last year 17,000, that was only 425 cats that were sterilized. I promise you, you need to do a heck of a lot more sterilizations. You're never going to have enough money to sterilize 16,000 cats. You have to be very strategic about how you use your resources. And we want to make sure, again, that everyone is respectful. And I'm going to actually introduce you now to Cameron Moore, who is in 2008 started this community cat program in Jacksonville when it wasn't being done anywhere, and I'd like to have Cameron come up.
Dr.
before-
Welsh? Yeah,
before-
go, please. Go
Give me
ahead.
1 minute before you do that. Where did you come up with the number 16,000?
16,000. We have demographic formulas that we use. That's the UC Davis formula for, we look at per capita. We can share that formula with you. It's an estimation, certainly, but we use those estimations nationally.
What's the margin of error for that particular formula?
Oh, I'm sure there's a
talking
margin of error, and
thousands?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But here's the point: there's a lot of outside cats because people let their cats in and out, and they're super friendly. And so, the point is, there's a lot of them. Personally, I don't let my cats outside, but I'd rather all cats be inside. That's not a realistic goal. So the goal must be spay neuter. And when we talk about low cost spay neuter, the most important population of people to subsidize has to be fixed income. Low cost for everybody in the city of Port Orange? No. There's a lot of people that just want a deal, right? So the fixed income pet owner doesn't have access. They might want to sterilize, and people that are feeding cats want to sterilize, but they don't have the money to do that. So when you talk about low cost, talk about subsidizing, that's where you're going to get the biggest impact. The fixed income pet owners are the ones that are populating shelters. They're the most likely to surrender to a shelter and the least likely to reclaim their pets, their dogs. Cats are not reclaimed in shelters. Another important thing for you to know that it is not productive for the city to say, oh, we're going to take these community cats to these friendly cats to the shelters so their owners can find them. Guess what? That happens 2% of the time in our country and 2% at your Humane Society. So that's a 98% failure rate. So that's not the answer. Dogs do better at 35%, but we're turning them right back where they're already cared for, and you stop that population explosion. So it really is beneficial for everybody. I'd like Cameron to just give a few minutes if you have a question.
Yeah, I do.
And then we can.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have a hard time subsidizing somebody's pet ownership. I have more inkling to find someone that has a pet that's not able to take care of it properly.
Yeah.
The
I
other-
can I respond to that by saying 29 million Americans are on food stamps who have pets. So again, we have to think what's a realistic way that we can decrease the number of animals going into the shelter. But again, I respect your opinion. I understand.
My question is, we talk about how you measure success. You seem to be, and correct me if I misinterpreted, that not in favor of counting and measuring how many we have.
Correct.
Well, if we have, if our ultimate goal, and maybe there's different goals, is to reduce the number of cats in these colonies, well, how do you measure that?
Right.
You don't have a metric and you don't have
Right.
a starting point.
Right, that's a great question. So first of all, this whole program, everything we're talking about is to prevent colonies to begin with. And if we do have colonies, make sure they don't get bigger and all of that is through sterilization. But the reason I say it's not practical is because cats live in neighborhoods. They might go to that colony because they know there's food there at 6 o'clock, but they're going back to my house and sleeping inside my house. And it's a very fluid society of community cats. They're very smart. They're opportunistic. So
I know you're the professional, but and I talked to a friend of mine who runs his own cat colony. He knows how many he has.
yeah.
So how is it difficult to count how many you have in your colony?
Okay, so you can count them for sure, but again, the bottom line is the goal is to sterilize as many as possible. So you're going to end up with the same goal. I'm just saying, spending time registering, managing colonies or trying to manage and register people waste the resources that your city would rather spend, I'm sure, on other things that are more productive. And so again, the metric of is this working is your enforcement complaints, number one, and certainly sterilization rates, decreasing the number of cats going into the shelter. I truly believe that's the most practical and strategic use of your resources.
Doctor, you had 3 items. I got 2 of them written down. Sterilize, ear tip, and
Rabies vaccinate.
Rabies, thank
Very
you.
important
Perfect.
that they're rabies vaccinated, yes.
Anybody else have questions before we move on to the?
Just a
Go ahead,
point of order
Scott.
for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're gonna hear from this is great news. I really appreciate you being here. And so we're gonna hear some really good information. But what I hope to hear tonight from a lot of the experts that are here tonight are how can you give us guidance to solve our unique problems? Volusia County's got
Yeah.
17 municipalities. We're
Yeah.
all different. Port Orange is different than Daytona. Expectations are different.
I hear you.
Ormond's different. Holly Hill's different. Everybody's different, and so I feel like we've got some great people in the room tonight. We have things that are unique to our city that our residents have different expectations, and so I guess what I'm asking, Mayor, is I feel like we're going to hear from a lot of great people, and at the end of the night, maybe they haven't covered some of the things we're looking for the most. And so, I don't know what the appropriate way to do that, because I feel like we get to the end, we're going to talk about because I've got several things, and are we just going to bring them all back up to rehash those particular items, or what's?
Yeah, after we hear from them, we'll have a conversation. We'll hear from the public, and certainly there'll be questions that probably arise out of that conversation, so we'll be able to go back to our experts again.
Okay.
Be able to hear from them,
I
so
would
that they
agree.
can supplement that. But it's ultimately going to come back to us, and we have staff recommendations that we're either going to accept, modify, or reject, that we've already had presented to us in writing anyway.
Yeah, and to that point, and nothing against Alan's presentation, but like some of the things I'm most concerned about haven't even been touched on in our own staff program or
Which
So-
we keep your questions handy, because
right.
if we don't,
I just didn't want to
over the
start
course
this
of
all
this,
back
if we don't
over-
get to it,
start this all back over at 8 o'clock tonight. You know what I mean?
no,
Okay.
keep your questions handy.
And to Scott's point, maybe I can just paraphrase it from my standpoint in agreements with that. I want to hear less philosophizing and big picture. So I want to hear, all right, what are your recommendations for the city of Port Orange?
So just to be clear, we didn't ask anybody for recommendations for our city. I've made those recommendations for our city based on this consensus of what the mandate was in 2017, and that hasn't changed. So we're not going to give you the details on how we're going to execute the plan, because you haven't told us to go ahead and execute the plan. The recommendation from staff is to decrease the colony population to 5 per district in the next 5 to 7 years. You can make it in 2 years. I don't care. We'll tell you what assets we need to get that done, if that's a consensus at this workshop. If the workshop's status quo, then we'll proceed with status quo. But based on and it's not fair for us to provide our recommendation, and Alan's done hundreds of hours of research to come up with our recommendations. We've heard by and large via research or meetings or about all these concerns. We're going to hear about them again today, but so far none of what I've heard has been any different, and it might. It's the first time I've met the doctor, but we've read some of the common research, and never have we doubted this research. What I've heard often that runs contrary to what I feel the mandate is, and the doctor also clarified, but do I care about the welfare of the cats? You bet. But my mandate is not the welfare of the cats. My mandate is to decrease the population, and I'm hoping both of those can run concurrently. But my mandate, as I understand it, is to decrease the amount of feral cats in Port Orange. Dr. Pisano has given us some great tools to use, and I've concurred with all of them so far. It's just going to take some increased oversight to get there. Some of the issues that we've all talked about before in private, not in private, but in the meetings in the city manager's room or conference room and here, are that not all cats that we send to get TNR get ear tipped. And if they are, they're hard to see. That would be part of the execution of the program if you decide to go that route. Something that we would try to figure out with Halifax and Redinger. So if there's something else that you want discussed, Mayor, I would suggest that you bring them out so the pros can maybe address them during the event, during their discussion, because I'm not sure I got them all now based on Councilman Stiltner's comments, but I think I do, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why we're going to have a preliminary conversation after we've heard from them. So
All right.
that those things will come out, and you can ask us to be clear,
Right.
and we can ask them to be clear. But after we hear from them, we'll have that preliminary conversation for you. Because the bottom line is, I do want to make sure you have clear direction from the five of us on how to continue.
Okay.
Okay. Doctor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to introduce Cameron Moore. You are very fortunate that she is from the famous Jacksonville. She started this community CAP program in 2008, and I just wanted her to give you a snapshot of that program and what's happened since. I think it's going to be really helpful for you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for letting me talk. So in 2008, our situation in Jacksonville with cats was pretty dire. We had over 13,000 cats coming into our shelter every year. The number was growing every year. We had complaint calls out the wazoo. You couldn't even keep up with the number of complaint calls. And everybody had a right to complain because things were out of control. The city allowed us to start this return to field program. We didn't know what we were getting into. We really thought the majority of these cats were feral. We found out they aren't. We found out over the years that more citizens do actually let their pets outside, that cats are not being abandoned out there, that because if we find a cat who's friendly and we don't know who takes care of it, that we're assuming that they're stray and they're lost and that someone's abandoned them. So I just ask you to keep all that in mind. When we started the program, the very first year, we took 5,400 cats through the program. We returned them back to where they were living. We were really afraid that everybody was going to be upset, that they were going to be calling and complaining. And so our enforcement team didn't want to deal with any of those calls, and they gave out my cell phone number. They had my business cards, and as they were picking up cats, if people were like, whoa, whoa, what's going on? They were like, call her and yell at
You
her.
gotta still be catching up sleep from that.
I was really concerned and worried, and then I waited for the phone to ring. And guess what? When you fix cats, when you sterilize them and vaccinate them and put them back, a lot of the negative reasons that are causing the complaints in the first place, they go away. So it's out of sight, out of mind. We left door hangers. We told people like, hey, if you see an ear-tipped cat, this is what it means. This is what you should do. Call us if you need help. And the first year I had 12 calls. Now, these calls, every one of them, I took so seriously because I didn't want our program to fail, and I didn't want our commissioner to say, that's it, we're not going to do this anymore. But each person that I talked to, they had very easy, there was easy ways to solve their problems because most of their problems are self-induced, right? And so you may feel now like you have a lot of complaints in your community, but I promise you, it's the same couple of complaints and they have the same solutions. And so if you have someone fielding those calls, you will be able to take care of them. The key is fixing these cats so that you stop that population growth. I'll tell you too, cats don't all live in colonies. Cats live in our neighborhoods. They live everywhere. So in our community, yes, we have some hotspot colonies. Cracker Barrel is one of them, right? Everybody knows that all the cats live at Cracker Barrel, and everybody who goes to Cracker Barrel feeds the cats. And so it made it really difficult to try to trap them and fix them because they're all eating cobbler and who knows what afterwards. But I promise you, majority of the cats are just, they show up at your doorstep. You start feeding them because you're a compassionate person, and then they tell their friends to come over, and nobody's fixed, and now you have litters, and then it gets out of control. Whenever we've talked to somebody who has 30 cats, they didn't start out with 30 cats. And boy, if we could have fixed them at that first one or the two, and then they knew what to do, they wouldn't have 30 cats. So what has happened over time in Jacksonville, though, is every single year the number of cats going into our shelters decreased because we have stopped the population boom. Now, we haven't solved it because we constantly have citizens moving in and out of our community. We're not in a bubble, right? And so, but this past year, we took in 4,200 cats instead of 13,000 cats. And to be honest with you, now we've trained our public, you don't even bring healthy outdoor cats to our shelter. They go straight to our spay-neuter clinic that we've partnered with because we've taught our community, if you just see a cat outside, it just needs to be sterilized and vaccinated. So if it doesn't have that ear tip, that's what it needs. And the transformation has been amazing. Our complaint calls have gone down. And people say, well, that's probably because they just got tired of complaining. No, people never get tired of complaining. They will complain about everything, right? We've solved their problems. Now, there might be new people who have problems, and so that's why we have to constantly keep this up. But complaint calls have gone down, the number of births have gone down, and we're also doing more spay-neuter through our private partnerships. But at this point in time, just looking at your numbers, what you've done so far has been great, but it's a drop in the bucket, right? So, but that doesn't mean that there can't be other public-private partnerships that help boost that money and the funding. It's also surgery capacity. You have to have someone who can be able to do all these surgeries. So I just want you to know that this program does work everywhere, and I respect that you feel you are different, and we hear that in every community. We are different. But you know what? The baseline issues are all the same, and the solutions are the same, and people are the same. And so this program does work, and we can link you to as many commissioners and communities that you want to talk to. I promise you, once you fix these cats, the problems go away. They really do.
Cameron,
Sir.
so what happens, my neighbor's one of those loving neighbors. So what happens when the second and third cat come because the cat told their friends, and my neighbor only puts out food enough for one cat? Do the other two cats go away? Do they all go away? Do they beat the heck out of each other and one of them eats?
If
Do they
you
share?
put out the buffet, I'm coming over, okay? So what we talk to people about is responsible feeding, and if it becomes an issue, so right now too, when cats are intact, and not only is there food there, but then there's females, then that attracts the boys, right? And so we sterilize the males, they will end up going home, right? These cats have a home. They're just opportunistics. I have cats that I
This one
feed-
shows up every morning and evening for food, and she
Well-
feeds one. So
But she's putting out the buffet, so she's really feeding all. So what she could do, if she only wants to feed the one, is she puts the food out for a limited amount of time. When she knows that cat has been there and eaten, she brings the food back inside.
yeah, she does. So
Yeah.
so what you're saying is you can limit the number of cats that come to a colony if
Well-
if you're following the rules of putting them in and taking them out. And
I
folks,
think-
bear with me. I'm not
Sure.
trying to catch her in anything. I'm just trying
No.
to understand.
My thing is, if I had a cat cross my path, I would just neuter it. just
Well,
just anyway, regardless
It's
if I'm
already
going to
neutered.
feed it or not.
I'm
But I mean-
asking for they're
Right.
following the rules. It's
Right.
neutered, but what's going
But
to
if
stop?
but if a second cat comes up, I would get that one fixed too. Because regardless of if it stays or if it leaves, we don't want it having babies on the next block over and causing a problem.
Sure.
Right? So cats will, if there's no food here, they're going to go somewhere else, right?
So what about the going back to fixed income? What about the fixed income person that feels sorry for the one cat and gets it neutered, whether it be on the Port Orange program or grant or pays out of their pocket, and feeds that cat, a helping, the same helping I give my indoor cat, and more come, and now that person's bought off on a 10 cat problem that they can no longer afford,
Sure.
and then but they feel sorry so they'll keep on feeding them, but they won't take them to neuter anymore because either they don't have the money, they don't have the time, they don't have the transportation. Is there a way to limit the amount of cats in a colony?
Spay and neuter. You need to get them all fixed. But if someone has become overrun with the situation, and remember, colonies
Right.
happen because we've never done anything productive to stop them, right? So
Right.
now it's kind of out of control. So once we sterilize them, then that stops at least the process.
Yeah.
But what I did in our community is when we would have a neighbor who called, and boy, they were the ones that got caught in that cycle, we would work with our partners, right? And so if they had kittens, we would try to get the kittens into adoption
Sure.
program. If they had friendly cats there.
So everybody
we would-
mobilizes and tries to solve.
Exactly. But honestly, that's most people, because again, cats don't just live like I'm the only cat that lives on this street. You can walk through my neighborhood, you see cats everywhere. And so it's never just one. And it's funny that your neighbor has just the one, but I promise you
Well, one
there's
that
more
I see,
cats
yeah.
around. Right.
All right.
But the key is definitely if you spay and neuter everybody, then you solve your problem. Or as many as you can get your hands on.
What are there's another side of the coin. What are your penalties, your methods of holding folks accountable?
Sure.
whose-
That's what our
hang
ordinances
on a
are
second,
for.
For whose homes, neighbors of folks of colony owners are being trespassed on, or business owners
Right.
who have cats roaming
Sure.
around their area, because that happens, and that's a
Yes.
big flaw in what we have right now is
Right.
accountability.
Right.
You know, I'm sensitive to the colony owners that want to continue to do that. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work. There's another side to this too, that people are negatively affected. So what is your
Yes.
strategy of holding them
So
accountable?
in Jacksonville, we did build some rules into our ordinances that try to get people to be more responsible and to be respectful of others, so that our enforcement team had some legal language to fall back on. The thing about people who have good hearts and feed cats don't necessarily call themselves colony owners, and they don't feel that they are responsible. They're just like, I'm just a good person. I saw a cat at Target and I felt sorry for it, so I put some food out. They're not thinking, gee, I should go to a class and get registered and figure out how I can come here every day and feed this cat. They're just, majority of the people are just nice people who put out food. And so, but you have some really robust caretakers here in the community who do decide, like, that is my mission and that's what I'm going to do. However, we have to be respectful of other people's property. I live in a 0 lot line neighborhood, and it's I have no way of blocking everybody out. I wish I had like a bubble around me where nothing could come in and, you know, I could control everything, but I don't. Sometimes as homeowners and as business owners, we have to do proactive things to keep things off our property that we don't want. But a lot of times too, it's just a matter of common sense to resolve the issues. So when I did have people that were very adamant, like, I don't like cats, I don't want cats on my property, I would go out there and visit with them and say, well, what's the issue? A lot of times they were creating their own problems.
Hang on a second. You mentioned common sense. People talking about. I'm asking, what do you have as a policy where you can go out and enforce? This is on the books. This is how we resolve this issue.
I can share with you language in our ordinance that might
We have
help
the-
you.
We have the ordinance.
Okay, but honestly, when you're dealing with people, attacking them punitively is not always the best way to get what you
I'm not
want.
trying
No,
to
no, no,
attack
and I'm not saying
anybody. I
attack.
wanna
So
hold people accountable
it
and
drives people
protect people's
underground.
homeowners.
Right, right. But again, that's what you have ordinances for. We've shared with your city manager some ordinances. We can provide you more. But again, in working with people, you want them to partner with you and feel comfortable. And yes, that's why we have the ordinances. Is if someone is doing something blatant that is not right, that's what we have our ordinances for. But we get farther working with people and trying to help them be more respectful and responsible than just trying to issue them a citation. Because it does drive people underground, and that's been shown too in a lot of communities. When the citizens realize that you guys are trying to work together on the same goal, then they come out and they want to help you. Otherwise, they're just like, whoa, here comes those bad guys. We're going to pretend like we don't know anything and run away.
I think that's a bad characterization. If we're trying to protect somebody's home and property, we're not the bad guys.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, for example, in my home, you know, I'm not going to use that example. Okay, right. So Sarah has a pool. She lives in a really nice neighborhood on a canal, and she had some raccoons come in pooping in her pool, right? And so her neighbors are like, well, why don't you just trap them and relocate them, right? Well, you can't trap every single raccoon in her neighborhood. So there were things that she had to do. She found out from her gardener that raccoons are afraid of rubber snakes, so you put rubber snakes out. When I was talking to people with community cats, people who had problems, a lot of times they were creating their own problems that had easy solutions to them. Other times there was a true situation on the community. Maybe a neighbor 3 doors down had gotten in over her head or his head and needed some help, and that's when we would step in and help. But as a homeowner, sometimes you do have to be proactive in keeping things out of your property that you don't want, like maybe raccoons in your pool. Yeah.
I'll agree to disagree.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? Where'd Alan go? Oh, he's hiding in the back. I don't understand that. Who you got coming up next, Alan?
Hassan, you're CCFAW?
All right. Come on, Pat.
If you're interested, Bob, you're welcome. If you're interested in speaking, you're next.
Because
because I have a bad sciatic, and sitting on these chairs is not a big plan, good plan. I'm Pat Mahalik, and I'm one of the co-founders of Concerned Citizens for Animal Welfare. And we've been working with the city since 2011, you all know that. And the program seemed to go along pretty good for a long time. Now I realize you have some questions and some things that have come up and about accountability and things like that. So I just want to address a couple of the things that were said, and maybe it'll help you. As far as accountability, every cat that goes to Redinger Clinic, every appointment that is made through me. I have 40 appointments that services 6 cities every Friday at the Redinger Clinic. Colony cats must go through me for every one of those cities. And so Port Orange was averaging somewhere around 10 cats every Friday, okay? So those people are on a list of that you have for registered colonies. Now I know we didn't like registered colonies. We didn't like that either. But all of the municipalities in Volusia County wanted some kind of record of the cat colonies, so that we would know who had them, how many cats were there, approximately. So that's what we did. And your legal department at the time, because it started here in Port Orange, wanted a piece of paper that was going to hold them not responsible if someone got bit or scratched or anything like that. So that's where that legal document came from. We worked with Chief Monahan and your legal department to come up with that piece of paper. Almost all of the municipalities in Volusia County right now use that. And you understand, everybody else has a TNR program. Some vary a little different from you. Like Deltona does not have them sign any kind of paper. They just have a master list of where the colonies are and a large map that they pinpoint where it is, so they can see problem areas with that. And they do, any cat that needs to be fixed is fixed in Deltona. Deltona went in 2012, they brought 1,282 cats to the Humane Society, okay? That's roughly $100 a cat, okay? So they spent $128,000 for cats. 100% of feral cats that come into the shelter don't come out of the shelter. There's nowhere to put them. 2% are returned to owner, and 1% of that 2% gets adopted. So most of the animals are euthanized. So they went from 1,282 cats in 2012 to 2018, and they had 184 cats. So they went from $128,000 to $18,000, roughly. Plus, their complaints dropped, everything dropped because of what they're doing. Now, like I said, they don't go through all the signing the paperwork. And Concerned Citizens for Animal Welfare does that for all of you. We do it all. We talk to the people whenever they call us. We send the paperwork out to them. We get all the information we need from them, their name, their address, where it is. If it's on a different property, we get a property owner agreement so that they know that it's on there. Then we make the appointments for them to get fixed. We follow up on that and make sure that they are doing it, because if you just do 1 or 2 cats and you have 10 cats, it doesn't work that way, because it's like taking a cup of water out of the ocean. It's like when your animal control officer goes and plunks a trap down at someone's house and they say they have a cat problem, and they haul the cat off to the Humane Society, okay? That is like, it's not doing any good. It may satisfy that person that's there that's complaining, but there's going to be more cats. It's called the vacuum effect. The cats are going to come. Female cats draw male cats for a 2-mile radius. Cats have no idea, they don't have GPS systems to know that they're coming into Port Orange. They just know they're following their nose. They're the ones, the males cause the most problems, because they spray, they fight, they go on people's cars for tactical positions on fighting. This is what they do. So as the people from the University of Florida said, fixing is the only way to do it. For 50 some years, catch and kill was the method of doing it. Didn't help. The populations continued to grow. You here have 300 plus colonies, okay? But those aren't active colonies, what we say active. Yes, there may be cats still living there, but everybody's fixed. Nobody is making babies. They're all fixed out of that 300. And those are 300 minimum, 300 households with, if say there's only one person in there, that's 300 volunteers that you have for Port Orange. They trap the cats. We make the appointment. You make the appointment first. Then your caregiver traps the cats, transports the cats to the Redinger Clinic, picks the cats up, rehabs them, because you have to watch them for 24 hours for males, 48 hours for females, to make sure that they're not bleeding or something is wrong with them. And then they return them to the colony. They're fixed. If they get cats that are friendly, they'll call one of us, one of the rescue organizations. We won't put that cat back. We'll find a home for it. So it's reducing the colony. If they have kittens, we're reducing the colony. We just recently, because of the fact that there was some complaints about cats not being able to see the ear tip, we just recently put into effect any colony cat that comes in, whether it's going for adoption or wherever it's going, if they don't want to, because ear tip cats are hard to adopt out, and you certainly don't want to do that to kittens. Well, anyhow, we are now microchipping them. It's mandatory microchipping, and no cost to you. The cost is to the caregiver, $16 to get them microchipped. So if the cat doesn't have an ear tip and it's a stray cat and it comes in, it's microchipped. So you know exactly where that cat came from. So that we just put that into effect because of the problems that you were having. So then I make the appointments. Then we get the bill from Redinger for each city. I get that bill. I go over that bill and I compare it to my list to make sure that they're billing you only for the colonies that are registered to Port Orange. And I check all of those colonies on the property appraiser's site to make sure, because you have unincorporated county in Port Orange. So I take those and do that. So I make sure that that's all Port Orange's colonies. I do that for Daytona Beach, for Edgewater, for New Smyrna Beach, Holly Hill, all of them. So then we get the bill. I go over the bill, I send it back to Redinger, and they send it to you. Because it shouldn't come from me, because I'm the one that's checking it. So it goes back to them, it's A-OK, and it goes to you. Each colony has its own separate invoice. So you're talking about accountability. You just have to look as far as your finance department, whoever's paying the bills. It says, if it's Pat Mahalik, 216 Yorktown Drive. It's going to say on that thing. It's going to say if it was a male cat, a female cat, if it was pregnant, it's going to be on there, everything that you paid for. You pay for nothing except spay and neuter, rabies and distemper, and if the cat is, well, I think they took that off now, but it used to be the cat was pregnant. It's $40. That's what you pay. Intake fee, when you take it to that, you're talking about finances. Intake is $88. And you're not doing it, it's not doing anything. It's just taking the cat in to be eventually euthanized. But that's what it's doing. It's not reducing the population because the other cats are still out there. You can take all the cats in an area and get rid of them. It's called the vacuum effect. You're sure within 6 months to have the same number of cats back where they were, if there's a natural food source or a human food source. And you're going to have both. So this is how it works. So that's, so you're talking about accountability and things like that. So this is where we are with that. Now, we do all of that for you. You're talking about hiring somebody. If you're going to hire somebody who's going to be a cat animal control person. That would be the best thing to have, that only handled cats. So that was the one thing that I wanted to tell you. Let me see what else. We do give them instructions. We give them instructions and rules. And if they are not following the rules and we get a complaint from the animal control department, they call us. And we go there and send someone. We usually send someone right to the place if they're not following the rules. They're not supposed to feed at night. They're not supposed to leave the food out. They're not supposed to draw raccoons. They're not supposed to, if an animal is sick or injured, they're supposed to let us know. All those things. And they have to continue fixing them. We have those rules in place.
But those things are still happening.
It's going to happen, but we're not getting those calls. We're not getting, someone's not calling us to say, hey, there's a problem with one of the colonies. We're not getting that call. So we have no idea unless we had a crystal ball. Whenever, if one of you called, like Mr. Johansson called me on one down on Church Street, we immediately sent Bob there. We immediately send someone. We don't want problems. But if we don't know about it, and it's a nuisance call, especially at one of our colonies, we don't know about it. If it's a nuisance call about cats that need to be signed up for the program, we don't know about that either. The only ones that we get are the people that know from our Facebook page or from that. That's who we're getting from Port Orange. Every other municipality that we work with calls us. Animal control calls us. We don't get those calls from you guys, ever. Ever. In 1,000 cats that you took to the Humane Society between 2018 and 2019, we got no calls, 0. So you tell me where the problem is. So that's where we are on that deal. So, but we address them immediately. We don't want a problem. We want these programs to be completely successful. We don't want those problems, and we will address them immediately. And if it's a problem that animal control has to come back and take those cats because the person is not going to follow it, we call them back and say, well, too bad, you can't follow the rules, so you no longer can have a colony, and the cats go bye-byes. They don't want that. Nobody wants it. So and we can say things to them that you can't. That you can't. So, but we can. But if we don't get that call, we're not doing that. So a lot of the things that Alan was talking about, we already have in place. It's just that you're not following so, I mean, I don't know, if you don't know the rules and we're not talking to the people, can't fix it. So let me see what else here. I said about the your abandonment, that there, a lot of the cats come from
Put an awful lot on that tiny note card.
I know, please. So, I know what I wanted to mention. The pet licensing, out of 67 counties, you're the only one that doesn't use pet licensing for part of their animal control budget. You're the only ones. So, I mean, Volusia County is, not just you. No, Volusia County, no one in Volusia County doesn't.
We don't have any control over that, what they do at county level anyway.
No, but
None of the cities in
I'm saying
Volusia County.
Every city, y'all 16 municipalities, nobody collects money for tags, and everybody has $2, $3, $5. Everybody else has minimum $10. Most of them are $20. If you're going to have an animal, you're going to have a license for that animal, and a lot of them use it for their budget. So I just wanted to mention that to you too. And
Is
it's
that a
easy.
year, Pat? A year or one time?
A year.
A year.
It's $20 a year. So, or $10. I mean, even $10. That's a minimal fee. The other ones, it costs you more to get the materials than you're making. So, but, the tags and that kind of stuff. Plus the fact, we do low-cost pet shot clinics. Okay, so there's no reason why anybody should not have a rabies certificate. If people are saying, well, we don't want to go get a rabies shot because it costs $1 million, to go to the vet to get that. No. In fact, we're giving free rabies shots right now. So, but we could do that. And we've had different municipalities that we're in, they'll have one of their officers come and sit there and sell tags. We've had that, and we allow that. So there's opportunity to make money that way. And you said about the grants, there are grants out there for municipalities. In fact, you got one right after this program started, and you were approached by the grant people. And as many years as I've been doing this, I've never had anybody call me up and say, hi there, you want a grant? But you did. You got a $20,000 grant to do cats because of your program, because it was so innovative. So again, there's where we stand. So do you have any questions?
Pat, you said out of the 200 to 300 colonies, many of them are inactive because
Correct.
all the cats are fixed.
Correct.
Well, where are 10 cats every day or every
Because
Friday coming from?
New
Where-
colonies, just like
But where if they're all fixed, is it just irresponsible pet owners leaving their cats out?
right.
Or where are the cats coming from?
Right. Irresponsible pet owners, exactly. You have people abandoning cats all the time. I just got a call today. Someone left their house and left 4 cats and a dog in their house. 4 head, bye-bye, gone. No repercussions whatsoever. Turns out one of them had a microchip. So that person can be identified. But there's no teeth in the law. There's none. So there we go. So we got these 4. Now, how we know they were there? The landlord came, out went the cats. Where did they go? The next door neighbor. Are any of the cats fixed? No. They are now. because they were friendly. We took them, so they're fixed.
Just
So-
curious, because like if you go to a shelter to adopt a cat or any of the things, you can't adopt them unless you agree to get them fixed. So where, I mean, it just,
Exactly that. Cats, like Dr. Bazzano said,
yeah.
You have 13,000 cats here in Port Orange, and that's by population. Alachua County did a study for us when we first started this program and figured there was 80,000 cats in Volusia County. 80,000, okay, stray cats. You have to figure cats can get pregnant at 4 months old. They can have kittens at 6 months. They can get pregnant the day they drop the kittens, and 62 days later have another litter. They can be nursing and be pregnant at the same time. They breed. You think rabbits breed that? And because it's Florida, the mortality rate is much lower than it is up north. Or this is why taking surveys any place else other than Florida makes no sense. Where I come from, I come from Pennsylvania. We don't have cat problems like this. We just don't, because the winter.
cold part of the
It's too
year.
cold most of the time, or wherever. But here they breed all year long. There's no breeding season here. They breed all year long, and the average litter here is 6 kittens. 6, and you can be sure the 3 of those are going to be female. And if they're left out there, so you can have instant colony. One cat shows up, the lady's house or man's house or whatever, and they feel sorry for the cat because it's meowing at the door, because this has been an indoor cat. It's not a feral cat that's living out in the woods. You're never going to see them, never. Never. They're going to be in the woods or wherever they're going to be. They're not going to be sitting on your porch. So, okay, you feed it. And you think, oh my God, it's really getting fat. Yeah, it's getting fat, all right. It's pregnant. It's going to have babies. So then we get the call. Oh, I now have 6 kittens and a mother living on my porch. Okay, what do? You have to fix it. Meantime, every male in a 2-mile radius is coming in there because she's now in heat again. Okay, so now you got kittens, and now you got all these cats coming around spraying, fighting, all that stuff. The neighbors are screaming and fighting. What are you going to do? You have to fix those cats. It's the only thing that's going to do it. You could take her away, but there's another one down the street that's the same situation. That's how they get it. But you figure 13,000 cats. You don't even know about those ones. The only ones you know about are the 300 responsible people that are on your list, and you have to take them as 300 volunteers. These are people who care about the animals, but care about they're saving you money. They're doing all the work for you. Your animal control officer is doing none of the work for those 300 people, and they'll work as hard as they can to get all of those cats. I have people call me and say, I only have 1 more to get. They'll call and give me an update on those animals. There's no way to go out there and count them. I mean, when they're working on them, when they're working on their colony, if one of their cats gets pregnant and they don't know it's pregnant, and you could go out and count, oh, well, they have 5 cats, and tomorrow they'll have 11. So it's crazy to try and count them. You want to fix them, and you want these people that are trying, your residents that, don't have anywhere to go right now to get them done. We're subsidizing it. So you want them to be able to get them fixed and do the work and work on getting them all done. And you need to advertise. You have nothing on your website. You have nothing that says, this program is available. You have nothing. So,
Pat, do me a favor. We talked about this a little bit when we met before. Give me your take on rogue feeders, because it seems to me, and we do have a serious problem with rogue feeders, and part of the recommendations that are being surfaced is strategically upping fines and the things that we can do. But it seems to me rogue feeding works contrary to your efforts.
absolutely. So if you've got a person who is feeding and not fixing, there's your problem. There's the problem, because nothing is. So we are 100% in favor of a feeding ban for feral cats if you don't have a colony. If you are getting the cats fixed, whether it be 1 cat that you found that you're feeding or 10 cats that you're getting feeding, then you can feed those cats and feed them. You're going to have to feed them for their lifetime. They have nowhere to go. Despite what everybody thinks, cats don't automatically know how to get food. They don't automatically know how to hunt. If their mother cat doesn't show them how to hunt, they're not hunting. So they're coming to you. This is why they show up at your door,
Whoa.
because they know that human is going to. Good.
I got 2 cats that never met their mother, and they kill a heck of a lot of snakes.
No,
and
okay, yes, but
there's some
listen,
killing machines out there.
but do they eat them? Do they
Heck
eat?
Yeah,
They do?
yeah.
Oh my God. That's usually, they usually will play with stuff.
If I
They usually play with
just
it
be
until
careful. If it's not science, don't quote it.
It
please.
is though. It is. But normally they're looking for food at the house. They don't know how to.
There's a lot of
to-
abnormal things going on in my house, so maybe I
I'll
just.
say.
My,
So,
my
but yes.
neighbor has cats, and every day, a bird, a squirrel, or a snake is brought to her back.
Yes, as a
every s-
trophy.
Every single day.
That's trophy hunt.
Yeah.
That's trophy
Yeah.
hunting.
And,
Well,
and
that-
honestly, what Drew's
that
talking
cat-
about is a nuisance behavior that people
That
are
cat
talking
never had
about.
its mother either.
Yeah, well, usually, yeah, but 10 to 1, that cat's not, is it a cat fixed?
Yes,
It is.
yes.
So, because usually they'll play with the things, anything that moves, you know how when you're playing with them with the light and that kind of stuff, they'll play. But usually they won't eat them, and that's trophy hunting.
It's amazing how many birds that cat can get.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I usually throw 'em up.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So, but in,
Mind if I address that as a number of all animals?
However, yeah.
So, the professional answer to that is, at the end of the day, TNR is the only program that reduces the number of free roaming cats. So what you're looking at is speciesism. I certainly don't want to be the guy up here on the microphone and be told I don't love a mouse over a cat or over a rhino. Well, at the end of the day, reducing the number of free roaming cats reduces their impact on all other species.
Miguel, hang on a second.
Yeah,
before you-
absolutely,
So, and Pat, this is for both of you, because Pat just got to talking about this vacuum effect, and that's contradictory to what you just saying. Pat's saying if we could magically round up all the cats and get rid of them, the same amount are going to show back up. Well, that's what you said, right, Pat? The vacuum effect?
well, the vacuum effect is if you just round them up, if you're not fixing the cats, if you're not, cats
You
will,
said if you got rid of all the cats.
yes, if you get rid of all the
We would
cats
have
and
all the same amount
and
of
you
cats
have
coming
you have a
back.
food source, if you have a food source,
Right.
natural or unnatural, you know,
Okay.
so if you have, you're going to get, cats are going to
But
move
you're
to
always going
that.
to have that. I mean,
Yes, but if you have somebody monitoring it, if you have your colony caregiver monitoring it and getting those cats fixed, most colony cats will chase other cats away. They won't let them eat in that area. Case in point, the first colony we started with you guys was the elementary school, Horizon Elementary School. There were 26 cats there to begin with, okay? And they were worried about the kids getting bit and all that kind of stuff. So we went there and did a real fast. That was the first colony. So we took 26 cats. Out of the 26, 10 were tame. We took the 10 and got them adopted. So it left 16 cats. They're down to 3 cats at that colony right now. They're down to 3 cats just through attrition.
but how many?
So-
And I
Yeah.
know exactly the case you're talking about. But now there's all these other colonies in that immediate area all over the place.
There are,
So-
but that wasn't. It's not from that colony. There's still only 3 at that colony because those cats will drive them off.
Right, but
So-
those colony cats there are roaming up to 2 miles, like we've heard tonight.
No,
right?
no, not colony cats don't roam. They'll
Okay.
they'll stay put. They don't roam because they have no reason to. The ones that roam are the ones that are looking to mate. That's usually their thing, or looking for food. Colony cats don't have either one of those goals. They have food from their caregiver and they are fixed, so they're not roaming to mate. So, but people move into the area. You have to remember, I mean, it's a fluent area and a transient area. It always has been, and no matter what municipality it's in. So you're going to have cats coming in, and people that don't know about the program, people that you talked about, people on fixed income that can't afford to get their cats fixed. If they don't know that there's a program that you have, they're not going to get them fixed. They're going to let them breed. And again, your rogue feeders that are feeding places and drawing the cats to that area. You know, cats can smell food for a distance also. And then not only that, those rogue feeders draw raccoons and rats and everything else, vultures, you know, but controlling it, just like Miguel said, fixing the cats is the only way that you're going to reduce that cat population. There's nothing else. There's no other way. If there would be, I wished I knew about it and we would be doing it that way. This is a lot of work
So
for everybody.
from a staff standpoint, council, we concur with most of this, and you know, the information piece, getting the information out, we need to be much more aggressive on that, and I've already signed off on, yeah, we haven't been aggressive on getting the information out that, you know, if you have a cat, it better be neutered. If it's not, come and talk to us. We've got a couple opportunities for you. What we do have, though, is there's kind of a disparity between the information that we pulled on what we write a check for and just Pat's TNR stuff that she does. And we do see, other than Pat, using the cities, or had in the past used the city's TNR funding for TNR, and not every one of those cats got ear tipped, which was one of my concerns. And you know, when somebody asked me, you know, where's my money going, and we kind of dug into that, I'm like, ooh. So that's why I'm not, and again, Pat, I'm not saying that I don't trust CCFAW. I don't have a contract with them. And back to that audit thing, Mayor, I cannot guarantee you with my signature that everything's going well, because I don't have a contract with anybody like we do with solid waste, like we do with the landscapers. I can't hold anybody accountable. And I love what they're doing, but I can't hold them accountable. I can just say, man, I hope you're right. And that doesn't work from a taxpayer accountability, good stewardship of money, and an auditing perspective. So.
Did we not have one with Redinger, though?
No, we have an agreement with Halifax Humane, but
I mean, for the TNR part.
No, we pay as you go. We
But
budget
isn't
for
part
it,
of
and
that,
pay as you
aren't
go.
they- Isn't part of that agreement, though, that they're all to be ear tipped?
No.
No,
We
because
thought
part
based
of the
on
problem.
a comment that, and I'm not going to say where it came from, but every cat that gets TNR gets ear tipped, and we know for a fact that that's not true. So that is one of my concerns, is that I don't know what I don't know, and I need to control that. Or the city needs to
So-
close the loop on that.
Okay.
For
Got a ear tip on
clarification,
that, and we got a
clarification,
microchip.
Jake, is one of the recommendations to possibly have a contract with that organization, who would in turn, at their discretion, work with?
No, we'll control the program in-house. So somebody with a Port Orange shirt, badge, something, will be doing all the neutering. And if that cat didn't come from Port Orange, then that cat's not getting neutered, I would imagine.
The contract's part of that as well, though. That's one of
The HHS contract,
the Redinger contract.
Redinger
correct?
contract, yeah,
That's what I'm.
yeah, Matt, clarified.
Pat,
So we do
Can I-
have a contract with Redinger? Not yet. Or we?
No, that was one
Not
of the
yet.
points
Okay.
that was proposed.
Okay.
on the ear tip, if you look at the contract that was written up, the caregiver agreement that is with the caregiver and you guys, okay, it gives the option to have the cats fixed and adopted, because then that way it reduces the number that's out there. You're going to fix them anyway if they belong to the colony, but this way they can be adopted.
So tell me, Pat, back to my two cats, we adopted them in Norfolk, Virginia, and we paid $65 per cat. That $65 covered rabies and the reimbursement for the neutering, and probably a week or two of time in the kennel. So if we're bringing cats to get neutered and then adopted, shouldn't that be part of the adoption fee?
It can be, but the adoption fees for most of the rescues is $50. Okay, by the time they take those kittens, you don't pay for the kitten shots. You don't pay
Is
for
you the
worm-
person that adopts? You're saying you, not the city. You, the person who
who's
adopts.
the rescue.
Right.
Whoever's rescuing the kittens
Uh-huh.
and taking the kittens, they pay everything. Most of the time, if everything goes exactly right, okay, if this is without spay and neuter, if everything goes exactly right, you have $100 invested in it. We did it. We used to do 300 cats a year. We used to take it out. I mean, it had nothing to do with the TNR program, but we used to do it. We would get $50 back out of that. So if you put that on your caregiver back on your caregiver that's a volunteer that's trying to do this and find those animals homes. In order to even adopt them out, they have to be
Neutered, rabies, yep.
Vaccinated. They have to be parasite free. They have to so that means buying. A tube of Revolution is $15, just one tube.
Yep.
To put flea medication. They have $100 invested in it. That $50, they're not doing it. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Plus, if that cat gets sick, that's all on them. You don't pay any of that. But you would have paid if they put them back, and that's what that would do. If they can't get them fixed, okay, under the program to get them fixed, which they would have been getting them fixed if they'd have been putting them back, they're not going to adopt them out. So instead of having one cat at the person's house that they're feeding,
So, but
you're gonna have
once the
six.
city neuters them and ear tips them, what happens after that is that's business, that's capitalism or not. We've met the need of the neuter program in preventing the increase in cats. So whether that, I understand from a heart perspective, I understand, but what's the difference to the city as far as cost, whether they get adopted or returned? In other words, if you want to adopt it, don't raise the price.
No one. It's tough enough to get $50, let alone you couldn't. If you raise
So
it-
that's, again, that's the price you pay for being, I hate to say it, but in that business.
Okay, so let me do the scenario. So you have 6 kittens at a colony.
Right.
Someone calls and they have 6 kittens at the colony. So you're telling me that you're going to fix those 6 kittens. If those aren't going to get adopted, you're going to fix them under the program, and we're going to ear tip them, and they're going to put them back because people won't adopt. It's very difficult to get ear tipped cats adopted because they have this thing about it's a feral cat. So it's very difficult to get them. So what we're going to do then is the lady has 6 cats now, 5 kittens and a mother cat. Okay, a mother cat's not adoptable. Okay, so we ear tip them all and give them back. So you got 6 cats, and there's a neighbor next door that maybe doesn't like cats, whatever. Now they're feeding 6 cats and taking care of 6 cats. Instead, you still get them fixed because you were going to do that to begin with, but we take them and get them adopted and don't ear tip them. But now we're microchipping them. So we're microchipping the cat at the expense of the caregiver, not the expense from the city. We're still but that reduces the number in that colony that's visible to the next door neighbor, to whoever.
I think my problem is if that cat ever ends up, and it's with any microchip cat, right? If that cat ends up out in the city again, then my animal control officers have to look and determine, well, is it fixed or not? I don't know. We got to catch it, or well, they're how far does that thing reach?
But
You gotta catch the cat to use the wand, right?
yeah. But what I was going to say is, why is your animal control officer there to begin with? If there's a cat complaint, we should be getting it.
And where are they getting
You see what I
You-
mean?
Yeah,
I mean downstream.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
If
get
it's
it.
adopted by a family that subsequently leaves it.
Right.
And it then becomes this stray, animal control gets called. I think, isn't that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Oh, if you're doing
Yeah.
a stray. Yes,
Or
but
if our
we're
animal
saying way
control's
down-
doing
but
an
they're,
audit.
but they're going to have to but they're going to have to capture it anyway. If they're coming to get it, they're going to have to capture it.
But they've got extra work if you microchip as opposed to tip it, because then it becomes obvious that had already
We don't care
been-
about that cat if it's ear tipped.
That's
Oh, I
what
see
it-
what you're
I mean, it's
I see
taking
what you're
us
saying.
off of the point of this, but I
Yeah.
think that's what his question was.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
I see what. Yeah, sure.
I don't know whether you can answer it, Pat or the doctor. If CCFAW is only doing 450 cats a year, and yet there are 13,000 to 16,000 cats in Port Orange, and the solution is spay and neuter, how do we ever get to a tipping point? And that's what I've not heard. And so I guess at some point as a policymaker, I don't want to throw a lot of money at a solution that never gets us
never
to the
gonna happen.
tipping point where we can get a handle on this. And if you say that, well, we will get to the tipping point, and by tipping point I mean the threshold where we start to impact this huge number, but that getting there is 10 years down the road. As a policymaker, I need to know that.
It's
Because the
usually,
numbers just don't compute. And if the capacity of the surgery, Redinger, is only 40 a week, and it's among all the cities, which is why we're only getting 10 a week or 15, 450 in a year into 13 or 16,000
You never catch.
doesn't get me anyplace. That's what I'm struggling with.
Right, and there isn't a perfect metric. So when we say there's an estimated 16,000, we want to think about where are the cats that are negatively interacting with people for whatever reason. Remember, half of Americans let cats out. So all the cats that are out there, very few of them are in the colonies that you're talking about. So the answer is you do the best you can in terms of numbers. You are not ever going to be able to sterilize or catch 16,000 of them. So this is again a matter of public-private partnerships. We help you with grant money. You allocate what you can. Municipalities start in Jacksonville. They started with $100,000 with their subsidized spay-neuter program, and over time they saw that increase, or I'm sorry, a drastic decrease in shelter intake and euthanasia as they did more surgeries. In the beginning, they didn't have money to do that many surgeries, but the tipping point, I can't tell you the number where the tipping point is, but I can tell you that 425 surgeries in your community is not enough to see a tipping point. You go by your enforcement. What I would use as the metrics are your enforcement complaints going to concerned citizens organizations, number of cats being called, ACOs being called to take cats to the shelter. Those are 3 really good metrics, but that's why it has to be very targeted, spay neuter, because you can't do all of them.
Well, I guess I have a problem with that. You're from the university. You talked about
Yeah.
a mathematical formula where you projected this
Right.
16,000 cats.
It's an estimate,
But by
yeah.
the same token, I'm a little disturbed that you haven't run the numbers differently. If you have X number of sterilizations in a year, how long, because it's a math problem,
Yeah.
how long or how can you impact
Yeah.
that 16,000 a time series, and there are
Yeah.
mathematical principles out there that would be able
Yeah.
to tell you and model that. So I guess, are you
Well,
not familiar with
Dr.
those models?
No, so
What does the
Dr.
literature tell us?
Levy at the University of Florida recently published a study that called high intensity spay neuter at 75% of that estimate, right? So that's 75% of 16,000 cats. I doubt your city will allocate the funding for that,
Right.
but you want to, that's a goal. But again, it's a dramatic decrease in your enforcement calls, and those are the metrics that you use. But the 75% is considered high intensity spay neuter.
I guess I'm a little disturbed about, I feel uncomfortable trying to make public policy when your response is, we do the best we can.
No,
You
I'm
know,
saying-
if we bring research to bear on this problem and estimates of the problem, I am disquieted that some of that research hasn't told us more about the way
Yeah.
forward.
Well, we have success stories. So we have thousands of these programs around the United States. The ones we started in Greenville, South Carolina, for example, in the first year, 2,000 less cats went into the shelter. The next year, 1,000 less cats went into the shelter. There, and I don't remember the number of the percent, their enforcement calls decreased, but it was pretty dramatic. You'll hear from Bob as well. And that's repeated in every community. So
Are there any meta-studies of the data from all of those? Because it would seem to me you could put all those
There-
together
Right.
and arrive at.
right. That
You know.
that is our work in the practical world in our consulting work, but no, we haven't published that work. And I didn't do the PowerPoint presentation, but we can send you our presentation with lots of graphs and more data, though, for sure.
Well, I don't know, I'm not asking to read all of that, but surely, can you give us a 1 or 2 short sentence as to what you found? X works, Y works, you know.
Some sort of summary?
So the targeted spay neuter of community cats means that I'm going to look at where those complaints are coming from. So you know your hot spots. And again, it's not just the colonies. Typically, it's in low-income areas, trailer parks, things like Cameron was mentioning, the Cracker Barrel. You focus on those areas, and the spay neuter, the targeted part of it, working in partnership with your community members that want to volunteer and help, and you'll see the difference. But I can give you lots more information.
Okay.
But again, we keep repeating, there is no other plan like targeted spay neuter that's going to impact and be as fiscally responsible for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Can I tell you, when we first started this, you were bringing, I think, I don't have the graphic in front of me, but I think it was 967 cats were brought in to the shelter in 2012. In 2013, I think it was 500 and some. So it almost halved itself. So you went when the program, and then it was going down from there, and then in the past 2 years it has gone up. So, but you know, we really haven't had the communication that we need for those to do more, you know.
The population has gone up as well, of people.
The population has
that
gone
bring
up,
cats,
yes,
so.
and we're getting new people, but you can gauge this by the number of cats that are going into the. If you had taken the 480 cats that were in 2018, you paid $88 a cat for that. If you would have got those 480 cats fixed, it would have only been $40 a cat.
So Pat,
Are you saying
can
18
I-
we didn't fix any cats?
You
said 480
you
went-
took 480 to the shelter with no TNR. I mean, we didn't get a call on any of those.
But we were
So-
participating in
And
TNR.
it would have
2000.
taken, how long would it have taken to neuter 480 cats?
Well, if they would have,
Just how long, how many a day, Doc? 40 a day, so it
And-
would have taken 10 days of Port Orange only to get those 480 cats.
but they didn't all come in. They come in 50 cats a month.
Got it, so it was a year? Got it,
That's in
thanks.
a year.
Appreciate it.
Am I
Hold on,
correct?
hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just want to make sure that, let's get through
Do you
all
want to
the
hear?
questioning
Do you
with
want to hear
Pat.
Bob talk too? He's going to.
Let's get
yeah.
through any, I just want to ask if there are any other additional questions for
For
Pat,
me.
because we still got to get to our discussion.
Right.
And that's the meat of this, is the policy discussion.
I just have one more question.
So, no, go ahead,
No.
I just want
Yeah,
to get us
Yeah,
on
yeah,
track here.
And
Go
this
ahead.
will be
What's-
limiting the amount during my comments anyway. Am I, to put it in a sentence, am I correct in understanding that you're not saying that that success is not the fewer amount of feral cats, but rather success is determined based on how many you fix? Is that what,
No.
am I hearing that?
How many are going
No,
to the shelter?
it's depends on success is how many less go into the shelter. That's where your big money is, and it's not fixing the problem. So if you're taking cats to the shelter, the less cats you take to the shelter, the more equitable it is for you cost-wise, and the more cats that aren't going to be reproducing.
Well, by taking them to shelter, eventually that means euthanization, correct?
Right.
But my question is, I'm not interested in that. My question is, we're looking at the success is fewer feral cats. And what you're saying is, well, we're not able to really measure that. The way we can measure is by how many you fixed. Is that accurate?
No, the number
I
you're
just look at- ask for
the
clarification.
number is going to go by how many complaints you have, because there's cats living in the woods everywhere. You're not going to go out and capture those cats. You're going to have the ones that are coming into areas where people see them and where people are going to have complaints, or people are feeding them, and suddenly instead of just one cat they have 5. Those are the complaints you're going to get, and those are what you are going to address. The ones that are living in the woods are going to be there forever. You're not going to those unless they come to somebody's door, which you're not going to see those. Those 16,000 is in all over Port Orange. But if you advertise the fact that you have a program where affordable program that they could get their cat fixed, when it comes to their door, instead of letting it have kittens, and then you're not going to get a call from your animal control officer saying, oh wow, I have 10 cats here and I can't do anything with them. And she takes the 10 cats, and instead of fixing them, we take them to the shelter at $88 a head, which does nothing, because the next cat that wanders down the street that was coming the person's going to feed it again.
And I'm
So-
not saying I can't
Yeah.
get into that, but it requires a new philosophical way of thinking on my end, because consistent with what Councilwoman Ford was saying, if I understand correctly, without a numerical metric to measure, it's hard to make policy without that. But you're saying the metric to measure is not so much fewer cats, but rather how many you get fixed and how fewer complaints you have.
Correct. In a way, yes. And also, how many are not going to the shelter at a double the cost to the city? You have to take your impoundment budget. You know, your impoundment budget is way more than the $17,000 that you spent on the same number of cats. 400 and some cats got fixed. 400 and some went to the shelter. If you'd have spent the money from the shelter, it would only been half as much, and you'd have gotten those fixed. So that's how you would measure. Okay.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Alan, who do you have next for us? I've heard of this guy. Come on up, Bob. Is he the last one before we get to our discussion? Okay. Bob, what do you got to add for us?
Mayor, Commissioners, I appreciate you taking your time to look at this issue. We all care a lot about it. Of course, first, my name's Bob Belt. I'm a volunteer for Concerned Citizens for Animal Welfare. I also am a member of the board of the Animal Control Advisory Board for Volusia County, as well as New Smyrna Beach. I've been involved in working with free roaming cats for about 25, 26 years. You basically, and I'm not going to try to re-educate you on the benefits of TNR to your city, because by now you should have enough information to know that this is a solution, because you have no other solution. You have two choices. You fix the cats or you don't fix the cats. The way you go about fixing them is up to you. You don't want to work with CCFAW or you want to hire an outside, it doesn't matter. But you got to fix the cats. And if you're going to fix them yourself, and I would highly suggest that you take it upon yourself to control the whole program yourself and do it all yourself. But you have to understand, if you decide that you're not going to do it, then your population will grow. 100 years of trying to trap and remove has led us to where we're at today. We've been practicing return to field and TNR in this city since 2011. I was part of the original pilot program and was actually trapping cats at 5 o'clock in the morning at Horizon Elementary School. And that's one example of many that I've had personally over the many years I've helped cats, and I've seen it work. And the thing that I always say is, if you have an issue with TNR and you're not sure if it works or not, then take a look at not doing nothing that we've done for 100 years and look at the results of doing that. We can either turn our backs on the problem and ignore it, which is what we've done all over our country for so long, or we can be proactive. None of us want cats to be outside. Cats don't belong outside. They're an invasive species. They have no business being outside. The problem is they are. And it's what we do about it, that's what makes a difference. And for all these years, all over our country, we have turned our back, and we just simply don't have the resources to trap and remove enough of them to make any difference. We just don't. And you're talking about how many do we have to fix in order for that to change? We got to fix 75 to 80%. 100 years of trap and remove is not going to be fixed in 10 years in Port Orange. If we continue to fix the cats, are we making a difference? I also worked for the city of Daytona Beach, and 4 months ago they decided that they wanted to complement their TNR program because they saw success, but they wanted to do it throughout the city, and they wanted someone to help them solve the problems that they have. So the chief of police and with CCFAW met and decided that they would need somebody to work strictly with cats. And I started doing that 4 months ago. And what I do every day I go out, I get calls every morning. I go out, I look at problems, I look at the caregiver, if there is a caregiver, and the RP or the complainant, and we decide exactly what the problem is. And we solve it, just like the University of Florida was telling you. We solve the problem. Once we solve the problem, then we can actually make a difference. Do I have 100% success in solving all the problems? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Some people it's really not the cats that are the problem. It's their obsession about their neighbor, or it's their obsession about what's going on. And when you explain to them, which I have solved many, many problems with tools that we can use, that will actually work. And we've done that over and over and over again. And I can say this, the senior animal control officer that I work with told me a year ago at this time, their nuisance calls were twice what they are now. Now, of course, he gives them all to me, so I take care of them anyway, but they are half of what they used to be. And the reason that is because we have so many more people now. Daytona is the highest user of the services provided by Redinger, the highest user of services. So of course, we're a larger city. Redinger is in Daytona Beach. But along with that, now we practice return to field. So for the past 4 months, we worked with 111 cats. Instead of taking those 111 cats as intake to put the burden on the shelter that are unadoptable animals in most cases, we actually fixed 98 of them, and we took 12 in for intake. The city saved $5,600, and our nuisance calls continue to decline. Do I know exactly we have less cats in Daytona Beach? We have 111 of them definitely aren't producing, so we have some less cats than we had before. Is the problem solved? Absolutely not. 100 years of trap and remove efforts. See, the reason it's never worked is because we don't have the resources. You don't have 100 animal control officers to go trap every cat in the city and take it to Miguel. You don't have that. Nobody does. And it's never worked. We tried to take some here and there. The caregivers and the animal control was always against each other. Years ago when I used to take care of cats, before I was involved in anything, when animal control showed up, and they didn't trap my cats because they were going to the shelter and they were going to be euthanized. They weren't coming back. So I would let the cat loose, and probably the trap wouldn't be in the best of shape when I was done with it. This went on for decade after decade after decade. But now we don't fight against the caregivers because we can't stop them. We can't stop people from feeding. They'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. They'll risk their job. They'll risk anything they can to feed the cats because they think that's what they're here to do. Okay? Road feeding, of course, is a problem, and we're working on that. We're coming up with new solutions all the time to help that situation. But the fact is, when it all comes down to it, when it comes down to the end, you got two choices. You fix them or you don't fix them. And if you don't fix them, you're going to have to round up. You have to hire a whole lot of people around a whole lot of them and put the burden back on the shelter. But I can guarantee you that you're never going to be able to do that. So all I'm suggesting is if you decide that you'd like to continue to fix cats, which is what you have to do, or you don't, but if you do it, you can do it all yourself. You can do it any way you want. But in order to go about doing it, just please understand there's details that must be followed. There are things that have to be done. So if you guys decide to do it yourselves as a city, then just understand how to do it and do it. That's all. We want the same thing you do. We want less cats. I do this as a passion because 25 years ago I found this cat that was almost dead. And he bit me when I tried to help him. So I'm a polymer science engineer by trade for 30 years. I'm real good at research, so I started researching the plight of the feral cat and the way we took care of feral cats. And it astounded me that we've euthanized millions and millions and millions of animals and spent millions and millions of our taxpayer dollars doing so all over our country, and the crisis has continued to grow. And it's become a crisis now, because we simply never had the resources to remove enough of them to make any difference. We just never have.
Thanks, Bob.
So, you have any questions? Want the truth, I'll get back with you, but go ahead. Anything you want. We just got to look at it in a common sense way, and either we fix them or we don't. And if you want to fix them, which you're going to have to do, because if you don't, your population will grow and it will get out of control. Any way you want to, and any way we can be of assistance to help you, boy, we'd sure like to do that too. Okay?
Thanks. I think that comes down to a couple of things. One, I mean, what we're going to do, and two, how we're going to do it. And that is a very simple, succinct summary of a very complex problem and a complex set of recommendations, and for which council needs to discuss right now. Jake, you want to recap those recommendations for us so that we can discuss them, and give us anything you might want to add. And council, as we go through these, I want them to recap these, but then we'll go through them one by one. I want them to go through these with a recap, then we'll go through them one by one, and then there's something that is not on that list that we feel should be. Let's get that out here too, okay?
So my recommendation is within the next 5 to 7 years, decrease the colony populations to, my estimate is 5 per district for a total of 20. That will make it easier for us to do audits on the colonies, which we feel is necessary.
That's a recommended goal.
That is a recommended goal from staff. The recommendations that Alan provided, I think he's bringing them up, is adopt a contract with Redinger Clinic, mandatory periodic colony census, which we could do with minimal colonies. We can't with 300. In-source management of the TNR program. Require training for colony caregivers. And by the way, we do have a qualified trainer in-house right now. Adopt a feeding ordinance for rogue feeders, which has been talked about quite a bit. And increase penalties for pet abandonment. And talk to landlords about spay and neuter documents prior to leasing apartments. And increasing our pet license fee and allowing for, I would like to expand the donations with the pet licenses. I'd also like to allow for donations in the cashier's office for where the utility bills are paid for anybody that wants to do it.
For TNR or for?
For TNR.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay. Start with the first one. Bam, 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 all the way back. That's the very first one?
That's the very
Adopt
first
contract
one.
with
Yep.
Redinger Clinic. What would this look like?
Just in general terms, like you'd have with anything, if we want to continue to use them for spay and neuter and vaccination, it would just be a contract with them to say, hey, here's what you're going to do, here's how much you're going to charge us, here's your responsibilities, here's our responsibilities. If we want to get out of the contract, whatever the terms and notices would be, and any other general terms that the attorney.
Mayor, the things in the contract that I'd like to see are a little more, and we don't want to force our administrative burden on Redinger. We want Redinger to
No, we
neuter.
want to slow them down. We need to speed them up.
Yeah, we want sharper scissors, whatever they use. But but we want to make sure that the right 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 people are the only people doing it. And if I walk in with a cat and go, oh, come on, I'm the city manager, just neuter this cat, the answer is no. You're not on the approved list of 10. Give it to Pat, and she can have it done. But you and I sat in a breakfast meeting and heard a story that shocked us into this workshop today. We can't allow just anybody to go into Redinger and obligate $45 of the city's money. Some cities actually reimburse, right? You pay and then you bring your little receipt in and say, hey, I'm Jake Johansson from Port Orange. I just had this cat neutered. You ask a few questions and you get reimbursed. But whatever we do, that every $40 or $45 has to be accountable, and our finance department, our assistant city manager, somebody that's controlling this program will have to, when I say where's the 20 grand we had, where is it? He can show me how much is spent, or she, and how much is left. So I know to come to you to ask for more, or say we over budgeted, which
And
probably
then
would never
It seems to me
happen.
that we got some challenges, because you need to be able to write not just a contract, but you've got to be able to write a list of procedures on how to execute that contract from our end of it in-house. So you're going to
What we will do for you and what you will do for us, and we both agree that's what the
Well, that's
contract
just
would
the
do.
contract itself, and I have no problem with using Redinger. They do great work, and whether
Well,
it's them or
it-
somebody else. But the contract is important. The devil is certainly in the details, but what I'm talking about is making sure that we have systems and procedures in place on our end on how to execute that contract.
Well, that's staff work. We'll do that.
Exactly.
We have a great attorney. I think that is the cheapest rate. Redinger is it, Miguel? That's the cheapest.
By a landslide, yes.
By a landslide. So going somewhere different, and I've talked to a bunch of city managers that have hired in-house for a year. I don't think it was cost effective for them. So
Well, I'm
Redinger
not
is the,
interested in going somewhere else to spend
Well,
more
we-
money to get
what I'm saying
the
is
same thing or not as good.
what I'm saying is we've investigated going to other than Redinger, and it's just not cost effective.
And Mayor, this
And that's
also,
reassuring.
Yeah.
this also, of course, assumes that Redinger would have us as a partner in a contract.
Well, yeah, they
relationship.
wouldn't sign the contract.
I haven't asked that yet, but I figured I'd ask you first, and if you guys wanted, then we would ask, obviously, them if they would, because if they don't want a contract, then we can't
Well, let me
contract
ask the
them.
question first. Council, do we have any issues with using Redinger, or would you like to use somebody else? Any issue? Are we good with that?
If it's the most cost effective, that makes the most sense.
Okay, so the direction would be to staff to be
I
able
guess
to
I
work
didn't realize
on.
there was another option either, so.
No, there really isn't. This
Yeah.
is a recommendation. If we don't want
Well,
to
it's not just the
Yeah.
price, it's also the ability to handle the volume. So- so-
It sounds like you already made the decision to continue TNR, which I thought was
Well,
probably the.
I think that if we're gonna continue to do TNR, and if we are gonna do it and follow any of the other recommendations, we gotta have a methodology, and we gotta have somebody to use it. Like I said, I have no problem with using Redinger. It doesn't seem like this council is, but you've gotta be able to come back with us with the systems, procedures, the staff work, for us to be able to approve in a council meeting, and you gotta be able to work out a contract
So I think,
that works for both sides.
I don't think this is a policy unless you have a problem with Redinger, and it doesn't sound like you do.
I
This
don't
isn't
think we
a
do.
policy question. This is a contract execution, and we do it every day.
Yeah.
We'll arrange this.
Seems to me that this one was simple.
And as mentioned before, part of this is in terms of capacity. And I know in speaking with Miguel, he's worked with the city of Daytona Beach to increase their capacity to do some of the surgeries also at the HHS location at LPGBA, and they've been said that they would be interested in increasing capacity if there was work there to do, if they could handle it. That's something they would have to look at. In addition to that, in talking with Adam Leith at the county, they also are trying to increase their capacity as well. So in terms of the discussion about capacity, we, of course, as administrators, would always come back to you if we have a cheaper, better, more efficient option or more option. If we need to get to more cats, there are possibilities
Now,
out
we're
there.
starting to beat this horse. We've
Yeah.
already made the
We
decision.
already agreed.
The bigger policy decision is, we've heard a lot about TNR in and of itself. No matter who executes this, whether it's us or whatever it is, are we in favor of executing some sort of TNR program as part of our overall feral cat program? That's the question I'm gonna ask this body right here. Are we, or Scott?
I don't see how you not have some success unless you have TNR as an element for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can't not do anything, so yeah, we have to,
Okay.
you know.
Sorry, I'm just trying to
Well,
move
we
us
only have
along.
the two choices, as Bob said, so we have to do something.
Okay.
So
Chase?
TNR,
Yes, we need accountability.
accountability.
That's the big.
Marilyn? Yes with accountability. I think that that's the consensus, Jake, that we're moving forward with some form of, an element of TNR as part of our overall feral cat policy, and that the accountability piece has to be in place, and we look forward to seeing what you bring back to us in that regard. Council, did I
I-
sum it up nicely? Okay.
So
Well, we got a long way to go.
yeah, so I've heard a lot of. Okay.
This
I
is-
don't
now, this
think
is
we've
where-
heard from everybody, but
Now,
and
this
we're
is where I
making
say
decisions.
we've got a long way to go, because we've got
Question,
other
Mayor.
things, and Jake, in implementing this, that we're putting the hard part on you, because we're saying, yes, we want to do this, yes, we want to take a look at it, and yes, we want to use Redinger. We go to the next question, which is,
Yeah, Mayor, I-
because at the end of this, I want Jake, if he has got clarifying questions of us, so that he's clear on what he has to do, he's got to ask us.
Okay.
So we got a ways to go.
Well, I got
Go ahead.
something. Okay, we agree to participate in TNR, we do this. How are we gonna identify those cats? Microchip, ear
Hey, so-
clip? How do we do it?
Let-
I think we let staff figure out the best way to do this
Okay.
and come back with those recommendations for us, because
Yeah.
this is just a workshop.
Yeah.
We'll approve those
Okay,
we'll discuss those after they've had a chance to do the staff work. Next one. Mandatory periodic colony census. Where this is an accountability piece, and actually there are many methodologies for doing that.
I would also, Mayor, leave this, if you're gonna hold me accountable, I'll figure out how to make it an accountable program.
Is this a piece that we're all in favor of doing? I think, yes, mandatory periodic colony census?
I would rather you not bind me to that right now.
Okay.
You want me to, the policy is, is the policy still that you want us to reduce the amount of feral cats in Port Orange?
Yeah.
Then
Anybody
I will
opposed to
figure out, like everything else, some of which I haven't gotten to yet, figure out a metric to show you that decrease or increase, but I will provide that metric.
Well, the bottom
Counting
line is-
cats might not be the way to go. The doctor's algorithm that may or may not be good may be the best way to go. But if you say right now, I want you to count every cat, I might not be able to do that. So
Well, the problem we're going to have is that you still have some well, I'll let you work this out, but I'm just going to put some things on the table.
Sure.
Simply put, you got to have some sort of electronic database of people who you're talking to, who you're sending emails or phone calls when there are problems or questions.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit deep into the how we're going to do it.
Okay.
The policy, as I see it, Mayor, is do you want to do TNR? Do you want the numbers reduced? And then the things you're obligating people to be accountable for. Do you want me to hold them accountable to in-house training, which we recommend? And do you want ordinance fees and in-sourced or outsourced? Because an in-source probably, well, we've already talked about, we've talked to you about possibly
just
half
gave
an
us two
FTE.
things. What was
I
the
gave you
first?
3.
Okay, the first one?
Reduce the numbers of feral cats.
Yes. You all said
You
yes
said
to
yes
that.
to that. Training of colony owners, in-house training of colony owners.
Wait a
Which-
second. Hold there. Right there. Anybody opposed to that idea?
No.
Or more questions? Okay.
Stronger ordinances to include the rogue feeders.
I am very much in favor of that. Does anybody have any issue with that?
That works?
No.
Increase pet license fees to help fund the TNR program.
Okay. Any
Yes.
issues?
No issues, that works.
The penalties for pet abandonment, can that be wrapped up in that, Matt, can that be wrapped up in that ordinance? So that will be part of the ordinance. The landlord tips and collecting pet deposits, that will be a information education campaign. So that's me, you don't have to talk about that.
Can
And-
we broaden that?
What's that?
Broaden that? We need to educate the general
We're
public,
going
not
to,
just
an
landlords.
education campaign, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. The entire population, including those of us who don't have their cats licensed as of today, but I will tomorrow. My wife
had that as a
did. My
question,
wife
but I was going to
didn't.
ask you offline.
No,
number's going to
my
13?
wife did not.
13.
And it's one of the recommendations of low-cost spay-neuter program. We've already talked about the lowest cost being at Redinger, and we will aggressively try to find existing grants plus some people out there that we may not be thinking of. I mean, I'll knock on Port Orange Community Trust door if this is what's best for the community.
Jay,
So-
can we include in there something that would specify what would count as termination of a specific colony? If there's
We'll
so
we'll
much-
put that somewhere in our actual program.
The
Yep.
other two things, you said you weren't sure about a mandatory periodic colony census. I think let's broaden that to just say you need to come up with some metrics.
Yeah, no, I concur. Absolutely, I
So put that
concur.
on your list. and
Well,
then-
I think there's going to be a bunch of metrics in this one, and I obviously I'm saying this stuff because in my brain I know how I want to do this, and we'll get to a place where we can give you the metrics in a well-defined way.
I think that is vital because that's the lack of metrics is part of the problem that we have today and why we've arrived where we have today.
It's the same thing when we do our point-in-time count with the homeless. If you walk around Port Orange in the middle of the day, you can count 7 homeless people. And there's your point-in-time count,
Yeah,
there are more than 7 homeless people
certainly.
in Port Orange. But it just depends on how you want to spin it. We want to get the most accurate data.
And then, I don't know, did we ever discuss in-source, outsource?
That's the one that's out
the
there.
big question.
Oh, okay.
Are there any other issues that we want to bring up in addition to the ones that were presented to us? Because I think it really comes down to execution, which is the in-source, outsource question.
I'd just like to add on a very stiff penalty for abandonment.
We covered that, and
Well, when it's,
That'll be in the ordinance. You guys can discuss. We'll put a number on it, and you all can
yeah,
talk about it in the ordinance when the ordinance comes up.
sounds good.
and, oh yeah, you said you're gonna address the rogue feeding as well, so that, okay.
Feeding, that was listed, we all agreed. Why don't we hear from the public, and then it'll come back to us for further discussion, and while we do that, that will actually allow Jake a few minutes to ruminate on what we just talked about.
Are you going to handle the in-source, outsource after the public comment or no?
Council?
I think if staff is ready to make a recommendation, I'd like
We
to hear
can.
it, but they might.
I think we need to
We
enforce it.
let me get a program to see what the scope of the program is, and then make that recommendation at that time.
Well, and
For the
I'd
insult,
appreciate
okay.
that too, because whatever it is we decide is gonna have a certain cost. And right now, we don't have any idea until now we've given you some direction which way
Right.
to go. You can't tell us what it's gonna cost or not, so it's kinda hard for me to say yes in source, no, not, or to what degree, without knowing what that is. And I wanna be able to give you a chance.
And you might change your mind after you hear from some of the public here too, so, all right?
Well, and I think that, you know, I've got a lot of things I haven't heard about enough tonight, so I want to make sure we get to that.
Please.
Especially with some of our subject matter experts that we have, and I think some of their advice and what they can offer for these concerns may have a lot of bearing on how do we
Exactly.
move forward with whether or not we bring something in-house or not.
And believe me, it won't be the last time that I communicate or we communicate with the pros from Dover here, so.
Nor should it be. Okay. Just to let everybody know, anybody who wants to speak, whether I have you on a piece of paper or not, if you want to have an opportunity to speak, I'll let you. It's no problem. I'll just start with those that have already turned in forms. If you, because of things that we've already discussed, decide that you don't feel like you need to speak, that's okay too. We'll move on to somebody else who wants the time. But you've got 3 minutes, so keep organized, talk to us. Sometimes I know the crowd will react with yays and boos or whatever. I'll sit here and say that while I'm not a fan of that, only because I want to make sure that the speaker is able to stay focused and use their time. I get that, that's part of it, just as long as the speaker understands that if you say something that's unpopular, you've got every right to do that as much as you have a right to say something that's popular. So tune all that out, face us, talk to us, and tell us what's on your mind. Darlene Kochendorfer? Gee, how did that get to the top of my list? You've been sitting for a little while.
Prep for that, as you know.
Good evening, I'm Darlene Kochendorfer. I live at 5571 Lancewood Drive in Port Orange, and I'm a volunteer for CCFAW. I see you've covered a lot of things. There are some things that are inaccurate, just based on my experience. I can address those things. I can address any question and do my best to answer it. If I can't, I'll defer to somebody else. I was just going to tell you a little bit about what I do. It's very intense. I trap, I transport, I recoup. I do it for other people. I get dispatched by CCFAW to fix problems before they give you a phone call. And so far it's worked very well. Most people have worked alongside me. I've loaned them traps. I've taught them to trap. Some people can't lift a trap, so because of some physical problem. We try to do as much for these folks as possible. And usually we are getting a call when there's, 2 mother cats and a dozen kittens. And again, the ear tip thing, I can explain that. Basically, what Pat was saying was that if we have a mother cat and 6 kittens, the mother cat gets ear tipped and put back. The 6 kittens go into foster. You're spending about $40 to fix that cat. The foster's probably in for about $150 a head. A whole lot more money. And basically, we're working for free. We're working very hard. And I'm also in a deficit, as are the fosters. For 2019, I made the mistake of adding up how much I spent. And it was $5,017.23. That's 1/4 of your TNR budget that came out of my pocket to help my neighbors, the cats, you, and the people who don't like the cats. I'm working just as hard for them. I just want a nice, balanced city, and we can do that. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to get in touch with me. I will do my best.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darlene.
Debbie Dorino.
Last name again?
Dorino, D-A-R-I-N-O? Did I say it right?
Dorino with a D.
Okay.
Dorino.
Debbie Dorino.
Yeah. Debbie Dorino,
did get it right.
6795 Calistoga Circle, Port Orange. Some of you know me from Ponce's Law. That was my bill that passed. And the Animal Abuse Registry. I just want to say I appreciate all of you for putting your heads together, trying to come up with a solution to this problem that you're having. As Bob spoke before, you either do it or you don't. If you don't, the problem's going to be worse than you think it is now. That's just common sense, I think. So I really support the TNR and what you guys are doing to help keep it in place. I also would like to say that you're very fortunate to have the CCFAW people out there doing what they do, because they're not getting paid to do that. They're out on their own time, on their own dime, and they're doing a lot of good things for the cats, for the community, for the people that don't like cats. They're trying to do what they can to make them happy too. And I understand there's a lot of people that don't like cats, don't want them around their businesses, don't want them around their house. But really the only way to help with the population is to spay and neuter. So it's great that you'll put a contract in place with Redinger Clinic. And, you know, obviously Miguel's very well organized with that, and Pat as well with getting these cats to, you know, be spayed and neutered. So again, I just want to say thank you. I hope that you will take into consideration all the suggestions from the University of Florida, from Cameron and Ms. Pisano, that, you know, they've been there, done that, from Pat and Bob again, from Miguel, their experience in this, and you're not going to find the passion that these people have for this issue anywhere else. So embrace it. You have it, it's free. So that's what I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you did with that. Cheryl Wild?
My name's Cheryl Wild. I live at 493 Leslie. I do have a 501c3 cat rescue. We do take most of our kittens and cats from Port Orange. We rely on you to fix them. People are saying 100, 150 per cat or kitten. A can of kitten replacement milk is $25. That lasts a week for a kitten. 6 weeks per kitten. We put hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our adoption fee is $60, whether we put $10 in or $2,000 for a block urinary problem. We take in the cats that are thrown outside, declawed, sick, hit by car, and I don't know that you guys are counting those or giving any value to that. I adopt out My rescue adopts out at Pet Supermarket. We're there every Saturday. I must tell at least 5 people about the TNR program every week, about Redinger. People do not know what the TNR program is. We did the parade to try and educate people on what TNR is. You really need to listen to these young ladies over here. They have it, the whole thing down. They've been everywhere. They're trying to help you, even though they may not say stuff you like. What else? When are we going to start the TNR program again? That's what I want to know. So we can start trapping and fixing more cats. So I also think for $17,000 compared to what you pay for impound fees, this has to go on, I think is a little excessive. Thank you.
Thank you. Samantha Ashby.
Down there on the right.
Going.
I think.
Samantha?
You, Samantha?
I'm leaving.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, no, you got to come up here and talk now.
Dr. Mikulski.
Good evening, I'm Judith Milkarski. I am the only one, I think, here addressing public health. I'm asking for less time than Dr. Pisano has. May I please have it? Or if I'm going to be restricted to 3 minutes, then I'll simply give a very abbreviated version and I'll provide you with the rest.
I'll tell you what, why don't we go ahead and reset the clock right? You got 3 minutes, but let's go ahead and reset the clock. So, thank you.
I'm the one who's been contacting you about the public health concerns regarding the Feral Cat Initiative in our city. We still need to have that very necessary public health interaction between you and I in order to fully address this. And there's no way I can address that in these few short minutes. When I heard that there were over 100 feral cat colonies in the city, I ran a FOIA, a public records request, and I received the addresses of 172 registered colonies. The only address that I recognized outright was at 201 Lafayette Street. I recognize that because it is Epiphany Catholic Church, which has been my church for the last 25 years. Talk about an OMG. On further research, I learned that the people who had the responsibility for this property had no clue that Epiphany Catholic Church was listed as an official feral cat colony site with the city of Port Orange. They didn't give their consent and they didn't give their permission. When I began mapping these colonies, I learned that the other Catholic church, Our Lady of Hope, was also listed as an official feral cat colony site with the city of Port Orange. And the only person at that parish who had the authority to permit this had no clue about that. In the interest of time, I will forward you my interaction with the city. We have moved from human rights issues to property rights issues. This is now elevated to the city manager, the city mayor, and the city attorney in order to address this. The feral cat activists like to say, with regard to toxoplasma, which has been one of my public health concerns, well, you can't blame the feral cats because they could have gotten infected from anywhere. This is a map. I don't know if the camera can pick it up or if you can see it. This is a map of the registered colonies in Port Orange. If you are a Catholic family in Port Orange living in the South Winds subdivision with children who go to Horizon Elementary School and Silver Sands Middle School, where you take your kids on weekends to play at All Children's Park, where you've got one set of grandparents living in a mobile home subdivision off of Commonwealth, another set of grandparents living in the Crane Lake subdivisions, and you have cousins who live in the Parkland subdivision. If you go to pay your respects to the uncle who is buried in the cemetery at the Spruce Creek Fly-In, if you like to go out for barbecue, if you buy your gas at Winn-Dixie, have your health care taken care of at CentraCare, buy your gas at the Circle K Shell, and if the mom gets her prescription for her prenatal vitamins at Florida Healthcare Pharmacy, then your anywhere is everywhere, courtesy of the feral cat activists. I will send you the rest. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Cindy Nauer?
Hi, Cindy Noor. I just wanted to let you know I went on
Yeah,
a
that's
cruise in, Noor.
Noor,
I went on
okay.
a cruise in November to Europe. Went to Croatia, Italy, Spain, France, and I saw TNR in Dubrovnik and in Mykonos, Greece. Of all places, there were colonies of cats with clipped ears, and I couldn't believe it, that it was actually over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it works here in America, and apparently it's working in other countries because they're doing it. And the colony that I have, that I've been managing for 3 years, I've trapped 23 cats. I only have 7 left. That's it. The rest have either I've buried and had a lot taken off that have been killed. Others disappeared. But out of 23, there's 7 left. So it does work.
Thank you.
Here and in other countries.
That's what we want to hear. Thank you. Miguel, I'll bring you back up after, I got one for you, but I'll bring you back up after everybody's done because we may have other questions for you anyway. Does anyone else here want to speak to the item? Come on.
Thank you for the time. It's Janice Nixon from 831 2nd Street. You've all have heard from me before. There's a lot of wonderful, well-meaning, well-intentioned people here, and I applaud them for their determination to help these animals. The sad reality is we cannot save them all. I don't like it. That's the way it is. What I'm hearing here tonight is an awful lot of circular talk that brings me around to the problem's never ever going to go away. Does that mean we do nothing? Absolutely not. I think spaying and neutering is a great idea, but the problem's never going to go away. Big question I have is there not a leash law in Port Orange? I know there is. Does it pertain to cats as well as dogs? I was told that it does. If it doesn't, that's fine. If it does, that might be something council wants to take under serious consideration. I love animals, all animals. I don't want to have to jump through hoops, however, to keep stray cats out of my yard. I have 3 dogs. I love them dearly. They go berserk when they know there's cats out there, and they know they're out there. And I want to go out, I want to go out, and I want to go out and run around. I call it OCD in the yard because they know the cats are out there. Other side of the fence, maybe my neighbor's bamboo thicket or wherever, but I don't want to be the problem. I'd like to help be the solution, but I think it's bigger than all of us. I hope we can find some solutions, help as many as we can, but just realize the reality is we're never going to be able to save them all. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thanks, Janice. Who else would like to speak?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Kathleen Bartos, owner and veterinarian at, Halifax Veterinary Center. First, I would like to bring up also, as Dr. Mokarski did, the public health aspects, that there should be no colonies in playgrounds, at schools, or anywhere like that. It's not just toxoplasmosis, but roundworms and other things that cats and other animals can transmit to people. And it's an important consideration. Then I would like to address the fact that this program that was done in Jacksonville works really well there. But there's a big difference between Jacksonville and Volusia County. There's one government in Duval County. We have so many governments, and they don't cooperate. Years and years ago, I was on the Feral Cat Task Force, And we proposed a universal tag so that everybody paid the same for their pet licensing in the whole county, and there was money in the whole county for a TNR program. I'm afraid that a TNR program is the only thing we can do, because we do have to do something, and we can't eliminate these cats. But I don't see how Port Orange can do it here and the county do it here and then Holly Hill do it here. It's got to be one program. Then the other thing I want to address is that there's a difference between community cats and feral cats. And I have lots of clients who take care of community cats. And that's a very different thing than these colonies. The colonies can be really big, and there are colonies, and they are colonies of feral cats, not community cats. There are community cats in neighborhoods, but behind Target and Boston Market and Winn-Dixie and all those other places, those are feral colonies. My cats, who don't go outside, but I mean my neighbor's cats, aren't going to Target to eat dinner tonight. They may go to the neighbor's house, but there are colonies there that have to be taken care of. And censuses are probably important.
Dr. Bardos, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who else would like to speak? Anyone else? Okay. Here, we got one more. Okay.
This is my first time speaking out of me. My name is Pam Delatoy. I live at 4490 Chalmette Court in Port Orange. And I have been just a volunteer in rescue for just a short time, couple, 3-4 years. I think I had in mind to share a couple of thoughts, but they've been covered, and it sounds like you are all in favor of reinstituting the TNR program, which is just, it's so helpful, and we're so grateful. I would just spend a moment encouraging you to listen to these people that came up from UF. They did a presentation in Deltona yesterday. They did a presentation in Daytona on Tuesday night. Dr. Sarah has about a 90-minute presentation. And I watch just a little bit of TV, and it's always HGTV. And when the Property Brothers or, you know, when the Fixer-Uppers or whomever, when they bump into an obstacle, they stop what they're doing and they call the experts. Dr. Sarah wrote a book. She wrote a playbook. It's like the Patriots playbook for making great success stories. Well, not this year.
Wait, she
great
cheated
success.
from her
All right,
program?
easy on my Patriots, all right? But great success stories. And I mean, she has, our assistant city mayor has spent, 3, 4, 5, 6 months doing intense research. She spent years. She's been in the field for 25 or more years. So you have a playbook already for you. They're just going to, Bill Belichick has given it to you. So I would encourage you before you, and no offense to anyone, I don't know how expert you are at this particular topic. Her life has been dedicated to that. I know some of you, I know you're expert fishermen, I know you're expert hunters, I know you're experts at different things that you do. I would encourage you, when you have the expert laying out the playbook, before you make any policies, before you worry about 16,000 and whether they're going to go down or whatever, they're going to go up, let's listen to a different way to count things. Let's listen to the accountability that has worked. And we are not different than any other county. We're not. She's done Waco, Texas. She's done South Carolina. She's been all over the globe if you listen to her presentation. We are not different. We have human beings. We have too many cats. This is a human problem. It is not a cat problem. It is absolutely because we have people who have blatant disregard for life in this community. And if you listen to Dr. Sarah, she's going to teach you and talk to you about partnering. And I appreciate, Chase, what you're saying. I am such an advocate of, like, if you abandon your pet, I like you to just go to jail. But this past year, I had a horrible crisis happen in my career, and my income just disappeared overnight. And so people bump up against things, and they do want to take care of their animals, but all of a sudden, they can't even put diapers on their kids. So before we be too quick to judge them, and Dr. Sarah has some great ways of saying this, please listen to her, read the playbook, look at the municipalities and the things that she's done. As a citizen and a voter, please, I just beg you to spend a little time with that book. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Hey, real quick,
Who else?
Bill Belichick, he's New England, right?
Hey.
Just checking. I'm looking forward to watching him tomorrow.
Jake, we're staying on track here. Who else would like to speak? Anyone else? Before we come back, come on.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Lee Cardwell. I live at 53 Chelsea Way, Port Orange, Florida. I can see the back of the library from my house. I also will be coming down tomorrow to register my critters. Thank you.
See you there.
I'd like to talk about that just for a minute because I think that we're not taking advantage of all the resources that we have and the goodwill that the people in Port Orange have. There's a lot of people in Port Orange that spend their own money. I know there's a lot of people in this room do, and it's all about helping the animals, which they do not want to be there. It's unfortunate that we've taken a domesticated creature and put it in an environment where it's left up to humans to take care of that, and oftentimes they don't. So I think if we join together in some way, I don't know whether it be maybe during the family days, there was some sort of information sharing process, website, or any other way that we could share that information to let them know not only about the TNR process, but other services that might be available for that activity. The other question I had is I'm a process auditor myself, and I understand the metric concern that Councilman Ford and Tremont have, as well as I think the rest of you did seem to indicate on that. There's a couple of metrics that you could look at, and that might be the call. I mean, obviously, you have the finance. If you take something to Halifax, a critter to Halifax, and it costs $88, and if I'm off on that number, I apologize for that. But obviously, you have a physical disparity between TNR process and then the euthanasia, or ultimately 98% that's what's going to happen. But I think ultimately some of the metrics that you're going to be looking at are the calls that you get for animal control. And I think that's a missed link too. If we have the capabilities within, and I'm not sure if that's something that Port Orange do or CCFAW, which is so graciously offered to do, to help with those concerned callers. And I understand the health aspect and the impact that feral cats have, but again, it's not their choice. It's something that's a man-made problem, and the only thing I think that we could do to rectify that is obviously reduce the number of cats. I would love it if there was no cats out whatsoever, but unfortunately, to get to that point, to get to that tripping or that tipping point where we start seeing that decline, it's going to take some effort from the council, and I really appreciate you guys looking at this and giving it a second shot, and I think we really need to move forward with that, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, that comes back to us for discussion. Jake, is there anything that we need to add or discuss, or anybody would like to call up?
I think Councilman Stiltner might be calling people back up, but one of the things I heard that I would like a little bit of guidance on at the end is a couple of people have brought up subsequent to your first discussion is not allowing colonies. I'll make it a general term. Schools, playgrounds. We've mentioned internally before. Churches, if they're private properties, they can do what they want, right? But playgrounds and schools, we can work with the county and probably get that to happen in public areas. So if you want to just add that on your things to talk to me about at the end and on what direction you want to go for that, that might work in the ordinance, and it'll definitely work in our procedures and whatnot.
Okay. With that in mind, Alan, is Mr. Rosen still? Where's he? Okay.
Moved seats 4 times.
I'm like.
He's trying.
He's going all over.
Where's Alan? Is there additional information based on the things that we've just heard that we want to talk about? The point that Jake made as far as the location of colonies, I thought that was expert and well well put, and I agree that we should talk about that. Is there, other than that, is there anything that I might have missed or that we might have missed that you feel like that we should talk about or have somebody else comment on while you have all these experts in the room?
No, I think, as Jake pointed out, a lot of the recommendations in this and the research that I did, really, it wasn't all focused on policy. And as you know, council manager form of government, we separate those two, policy and process and doing things. So, my goal really was to provide kind of an overarching, how do we manage this program and make it as effective as possible if we're going to do it. And then what I was going to do is kind of leave it to the experts, so to speak. Like, I have an idea, and I think Jake has an idea of how we would run this program if we were the animal control officer that was hired to do it. But I think in that, if we take it on and we have that person come on board to be the cat person, if you will, in the city, we would hire that person to make sure that they are, an expert in the field, and they can provide us that guidance, and then we would come to you and say, this is exactly what we need to do to make sure that the program runs smoothly and efficiently. So that's why I kind of stayed away from that lower level detail.
Okay. And we're not there yet anyway. We don't know what it's going to cost. We can't make a decision on something we don't know what's going to cost, so we're not there yet. We know that we want to execute it in some way, shape, or form. And the point of, and Jake, you and I have talked about this before, we can't afford to hire 50 or 100 animal control officers anyway, and that's, it goes back to so many other things, not just this, where we have infinite wants and finite resources, and we have to allocate it the best we possibly can.
To tell you the truth, and Pat and I kind of chatted about it in our meeting, but before that is, if we went status quo, even that would be different. If we went status quo back to pre-October, there's some relationship repairs that need to take place, even including me, to tell you the truth. I've met some new people. I want to spend some more time with the doctor via email, if not phone, and get into the book a little bit more about best practices, see what we're doing, and the accountability. I still owe you all that, and you heard just tonight that Pat said she does all our TNRs, but then another person came up here and said, you do my cats. So now I got, unless they all bring them to Pat, I'm not quite sure what we're paying for still. And that might just be my lack of understanding of what just happened, but I gotta at least get to the bottom of that, even if we went status quo. So anything above and beyond that, policy-wise, I think would be of benefit to us.
Okay. Council, kind of in our hands. Want to make sure that we give direction to the city manager that is worthwhile, so that when we come back with staff's hard work, that there aren't additional questions requiring them to go back again. I'd like them to be able to, they've spent a whole lot of hours on this, I'd like them to make sure that they have what they need. I think the one topic that came up already, no colonies near playgrounds and schools, and the impact of that, certainly think that is definitely worthy of discussion if you all want to do that right now. Sure.
No, I'm in favor of it.
In favor of no colonies near.
Yeah.
Now, because when we talk about that, I wholeheartedly agree. We know there are colonies that exist as of now, so what do we do with the colonies that would currently exist in those places? What do we,
we'll come up with
I think we have staff to look at that.
We have a proposed plan that is in its infancy stages. So when we come back to the council meeting, we'll propose that. Keep in mind that as far as I know, in the discussions with Chief earlier, we can't tell schools they can't have colonies, but we can ask the school board to not allow colonies on the school grounds.
And if I were to venture a guess, there probably a lack of awareness on their part, some of their parts as well.
I think our attorney wants to say something. No?
No, I think with the ordinance, I think it think it would apply even.
It would apply to the school.
In that setting, so I mean.
Okay,
I think
good.
the ordinance really just.
Good.
Depending on which way we go.
And I would give them the courtesy of letting them know that our ordinance will do it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Drew. Should not, okay, you said if there's one at a school or at a church, should not the person responsible for that property be the one signing off on that? So how can somebody register one at a school if they're not the responsible for the property? They don't have ownership of the property.
The same way they can
What-
register them at the church and.
Well, that's what I say, we just
Yeah, so we can
yeah.
solve it with the ordinance and
Okay.
communication. I'm just telling you, I haven't gone down that road yet.
Okay.
That was
And-
part of the more in-depth programmatic things that we would put in place.
Yeah.
Upon managing, if we're managing,
got
somebody
you.
else is managing it, to say that it has to be like the owner of the property that's
Yeah.
signing up, things like that.
Okay.
And we do have, I'm sorry, we do have many commercial property owners that have colonies that don't want them.
Okay.
And it's just like trespassing. All they have to do is let us know, and
Yeah.
and they're gonna have to police it themselves, but we can help them trap those cats and get in touch with CCFAW and make arrangements
okay.
to return them to field or something.
That's what needs to be, is return to field.
Miguel, I promised you that I'd allow you to respond, and obviously you can see that we've made a lot of progress tonight and we're still not done. So I'd like you to, if you could take a couple minutes, just add your thoughts, let us know if we're on track, or if there's anything else that you'd like to add. And keep in mind also that even outside this meeting, if there's something you forgot, we still have phones and emails.
Thank you, Mayor. I
Mayor,
appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Miguel. I'd hate to have him come up a third time. Maybe
Yeah,
we could
good
talk about our
question.
concerns, then he can
Yeah.
weigh in on those specifically.
Absolutely,
That makes a lot of
part,
sense.
this is part of the council.
You can stand right there.
No,
You
no,
don't
no.
have to sit back down, but I just,
But I wanted to hear from him because his conversation might actually spur some.
long as him and the doctor aren't leaving.
I like the idea of addressing concerns and then coming up. Honestly, my closing thoughts all have to do with questions I've heard thus far, so I can just add them into the pile and we can discuss it once your concerns are on the table.
Very good.
Happily, if that's okay with you, Mayor.
I had promised you another bite at the apple. I just want to make sure I fulfilled my promise.
Comfortable with that, sir. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Council. Discussion. Jake, what do you need from us?
I'm like Miguel. I want to hear everybody speak, please.
Okay, let's go down the line. Why don't we start with
I have a
Scott?
feeling that
Because I see he's got a full piece of paper there.
Yeah, so, first of all, I want to say Pam's comment about we have a human problem, not a cat problem, couldn't be more accurate. That's why we're here in the first place, and I fully agree. I think everybody on the council agrees. I think everybody in the audience has agreed. That's where we're at. That being said, I think we've talked a little bit about how do we measure success, and are we improving it, are we going the wrong way, or what? If you've lived in Port Orange for the last 25 years, and you understand that since 2011 we've at least had an attempt at a TNR program and a ton of great volunteers, we're failing. We're not getting it done. We're not doing the job enough to see the results that I think we want to look for in the city. I don't think I've ever heard anybody on city staff or on council say that a properly managed and funded TNR program won't work. I think we've seen the research. I think we've seen that data. The question is, how do we get there, and what does the hybrid plan look like for our community? You know, we all living in a city of 65,000 residents, full-time residents, that we all have different perspectives. We all look at things through different lenses. We all look at different issues. That being said, we've got places in our city and we have residents who, I'm a big private property fan. I like people to have their property rights. My kids grew up in this city. I didn't let my kids run amok in the neighborhood playing on other people's property that they weren't allowed or invited to be there. I've got dogs. I don't let them go running on other people's properties. And I expect the same thing in turn for mine, and I expect that for all of our residents in our city. That being said, one of the things I hear a ton on that I would like for you guys to touch on is, and I think you kind of started to go there, Doctor, is some of this needs to be laser specific. You know, instead of throwing out a cast net over the city, how do we target some of these very specific areas and put some of these flames out? And so some of the things we need some guidance on and some ways to create success is how do we target some of those things? Colonies on commercial and business properties are out of control. It's out of control. We can't have that impacting our residents. I've got residents who have told me they will not eat at Panera Bread because of feral cats. I had one lady call me. She said, I can't even go in and come out, and there's cats underneath my car, and my car's only parked there for 5 minutes. I'm like, that probably didn't happen. Sure enough, my wife and I took a ride. There's cats sleeping under people's cars while business is still open. And they've got an outdoor eating section, and there's cats walking around in the outdoor eating section. And I get it. I think these are feral cats. I mean, they certainly look like they're just at large, and folks are just dumping food in the parking lot. There's no control to it. And again, we're back. I'm out. Let me talk. So going back to what Pam was saying, that's a human problem. It's not a cat problem. But we still have to respond to it. I can't wait 10 years and watch businesses go out of business because we don't have a solution, and we say, well, we're just going to neuter them, we're going to return them right back to Panera. That's not going to happen. We got to come up with something else to at least try to help alleviate that. So if you guys could talk to that a little bit. Residential private property, same thing. Not everybody wants cats, dogs, any kind of animals on their properties. We heard one lady talk tonight. That's actually something I hear common is, I've got dogs, I don't want cats on my property. How are we helping those folks to understand that there's a colony nearby? What can we do to keep those cats off of those folks' properties? I know we've tried a lot of stuff in some different areas. We just haven't seen a whole lot of success with that. So we need some more guidance on that. I will tell you that I think that there are places in our city as well as around the county where colonies work really well. They're very well managed. The folks that are taking care of them do an outstanding job. Doesn't impact the rest of the community as a nuisance, and it works exactly as everybody hopes it to be. But what happens when those colonies are not in those locations and they're creating a general nuisance to a lot of folks in an area that it's just not conducive for that? How do you handle that? Is every colony handled exactly the same, regardless of where it's located and what those impacts? So if you could touch on that a little bit as well. The other thing is, we talked a little bit about finding and enforcement and looking at the ordinance. I think that when it comes to animal cruelty and abandonment, our city needs to take on a policy of strict enforcement, full enforcement. There should be no warnings for that kind of stuff. I liken that as to child abuse. I mean, I look at sometimes I'd rather spend a little time on the couch with my animals than my kids, but nonetheless, I think that just like we saw in Ponce Inlet, we just can't have people abusing animals. And again, it's a human problem. I keep echoing back to that, but when you look at almost every one of these things, it's a human problem. It's going to take humans to try to resolve it. So we need to look at that, and I think we need to take a perspective of full enforcement. You come to Port Orange, and if you treat animals cruel, if you abandon your animals, you do wrong by animals, it's not going to be a warning. It's not going to be a discussion. We will enforce it, and the enforcement is going to be strict. I think those kinds of, that's good for us, because that kind of message gets out, and people are less inclined to create that impact in our city, and hopefully they'll seek out opportunities, because that's the one thing is, in this day and age with the social media and everything at your fingertips, there's always a solution if you find yourself, hey, I can't take care of this dog or this cat or whatever. For the most part, there's options out there that need to at least be explored. The one thing I've seen that is also concerning, because I've spent a ton of time, especially in the last couple of months, looking at some of the colonies and really researching this and reading a lot of the documentation, is some of the colonies themselves, and again, human issue, not being managed correctly, to me, are creating an inhumane environment for these cats. Some are great. Some of them I look at that, I think the cat colonies are being managed so well, it would be great to be a cat in that colony, where others, it's just not so much. A good example, and there's plenty, but if you look at the one out there west of I-95, where the 7-Eleven is, between the 7-Eleven and the movie theater, out of control. Cats look horrible. They look sick. They're literally in the businesses, in the parking lots. It's just a horrible condition as a whole. And so I'm concerned too that I want to make sure that the colonies are properly managed, that those folks are trained, and when they're not in those areas and they're not getting that proper management, what do we do now? because we need to do something other than just say, well, the person, Mr. Smith, who was taking care of this colony that had 20 cats, decided to move somewhere away, and now there's nobody to take care of that, and situations are deteriorating, and so forth and so on. And so I know that this is a lot, and I don't expect to solve all those riddles tonight, but if you guys can weigh in on some of that, that would be quite helpful. And I just wanted to say overall thanks for coming tonight, especially those who come here, subject matter experts that aren't necessarily residents of Port Orange. That means a lot. And our residents do a fabulous job. We're fortunate to have a city where pretty much no matter what the issue is in Port Orange, we've got folks that want to step up and help resolve that. But we just got to keep in mind, not every resident will see it all the same way, but they count too, and their rights matter as well. So appreciate everybody coming out. And those that have been working with CCFAW or just literally volunteering and trying to do the right thing and help be part of a good solution, we appreciate that, no matter where this goes in the future, well into the future, because apparently, the one thing I think we can all agree on is this is not something that's getting resolved in the next couple of years. This is a long-term type of a deal that I hope that folks will continue to look for programs and seek opportunities, whether that be tied to the city, tied to programs and nonprofits, tied to Miguel's groups, whatever those are, seek ways to try to be helpful in those solutions when you have that time. So those are kind of some of the things that are on my mind, and when they come back up, if they can kind of talk a little bit about that. In terms of what Jake's staff recommendations are, my biggest concern there is once we put all this together, there's a cost. So we got to figure out how do we bridge that, because it sounds like we're talking about a staffing cost as well as a cost for Redinger. To be able to try to increase, because I think, and Marilyn touched on it earlier, if we're going to even try to get close to 75% or whatever, we're talking exponentially increasing a budget to get there. And
yes, sir.
Can Miguel's staff handle that? Can we create a staff that handles that? Can that be a hybrid of staff and volunteers that handles that? I mean, however that's got to be done, but the numbers of 13,000 or 16,000 cats are staggering, because that pretty much, I would say, tells you that's more cats than kids. Because I think we roughly have,
Sure.
with all of our schools, we roughly have about 10,000 kids in the city of Port Orange. So you're talking about essentially more cats than kids in the city, and so that's a lot.
And we can't afford to do it in-house alone. It would be managed in-house, but I need all the volunteers we can get.
Absolutely.
Well, and just a note on that too. One of our volunteers is in the audience tonight, and I won't embarrass them, but we've had a volunteer program with our police department for decades.
Yeah.
And it was really a model program started by Bob Ford many decades ago, and people all over the state. And it's just a good example of how volunteers can work with that municipality structure, and that hybrid of city staff and volunteers can have huge success on stuff like this, because that's a great example. And so I
That volunteer and police service, I think, really wants to get into this cat thing.
That's
so
why he's here. He wants to
I
make
think
sure
that's why he's here.
about.
Maybe not. Maybe I misread the tea leaves over there.
And I think that is another element of that, why we're talking about a feral cat policy, not just of which TNR is a component.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
how we handle quote unquote nuisance cats or complaints that's got to be addressed as well.
So that part is, we're doing that with or without whatever happens tonight. That'll come forth in the ordinance depending on, and you guys can strike it. But the incident, Bob Church Street, I forget, but the Church Street incident is nobody wants to play well in the sandbox over there, period. I mean, both sides are antagonists, and there's just no way to resolve that without having everybody cooperate to graduate, and that's not happening. But in some of these commercial places where the owners of the property don't want the cats there, that's where the compromise has to happen. In my opinion, I cannot trap, neuter, and return, because The people don't want that thing on their property. So that's where I have to, property right trumps cats' well-being, and that's why I want to return to field. We have other places where these cats can go. The city, has other places these cats can go. What happens once they get there, I don't know. But I can guarantee you, if the owner of that property doesn't want that cat on the property, I have a legal obligation to keep that cat off that property. And I will do that by all legal means possible.
And that's a huge concern, and that's something that CCFAW and volunteers and folks can try to help us think outside the box, because you can't continue to trap a problem and return it back to somebody else's
I cannot tell the property owner that I have to return this cat you don't want back on your
Right,
property.
you can't.
Because you talk about, I think somebody mentioned about going underground. That cat's going to disappear. It's either going to have a pellet in its head or something, because that person is just going to get sick of that cat.
We don't
And
have it.
I would
We
rather,
don't want
no, heck no.
Right.
Drew? And that's a tough act to follow, Scott. You put a lot of information in there and said a lot of things that I completely agree
Why
with.
do you think I started with him? His notes were longer than
know.
yours.
And so a lot of things he's covered, but I'd agree. First off, with what Scott said and what Pam says, we do have a big human problem and bad behavior and irresponsible pet owners. I don't know that you can fix that, because just like anything else, I think it's going to happen for infinity. It's just going to keep going on and on. I think the big thing that I'm probably most in favor of is increased penalties, and I'm not talking about taking their lunch money. I'm talking about harsh
Dinner money.
No, like harsh
I got it.
penalties for the abandonment, the abuse, the whole 9 yards. I mean, anything that we can do, fully enforce it, and I mean to the extent that we can't anymore.
You also have to be careful, because that penalty can be very stiff, but it still has to survive a legal challenge.
Well,
and if we go so stiff that we end up in court, then we're defeating ourselves.
So be
We
it.
got a good attorney.
I'll take my chances on a animal abuse case that's, cut and dried,
Yeah.
and them trying to say, hey, I don't think I should be fined for this. I like our chances in that situation. So.
And there's some things worth taking a risk for, and this would be one.
Yeah, the
We'll make
biggest
sure
thing
the
for me
ordinance
is
is
going to
written
be, the lack of oversight and accountability. We have to have that. I mean, we can say now, okay, we budgeted whatever, $18,000, $20,000. We know we spent that. However, we're not sure, exactly where the cats came from, if they were all.
It might have, I'm telling you, it might have
Yeah.
all been accounted for proper or spent properly. I just can't show that to you.
You can't. So we have to be able to do that. And the suggestions of the increased license or pet, the annual fees and the opportunity to donate for those that wish to, all great ideas. We should be doing something like that, and get as creative as you want on that. If there's somehow to a penalty, somebody could make I don't know if they can make a donation in lieu of a partial penalty for something or whatever to CCFAW or Halifax Humane Society or something. We should look at that. And clearly doing nothing isn't a possibility, and we're just going to have to, the term, it takes a village. We can't do it alone. We can't do it strictly in-house. It's going to take the entire community, really, and all the volunteers and all the people that are willing to help to really get anything to happen, and we got to be committed long-term. There's no short-term solution to this at all. So because of poor decisions that people will make down the road, we're going to be dealing with this for a long time, and the next council that's sitting up here 10 years from now or 20 years from now probably will be talking about this at some point, because maybe it won't be as big a problem, but we're still going to have issues. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Jake and staff and we can all come up with, and then getting something moving as quickly as we can get it moving where, you know, legally, everything is on the up and up, and we can, you know, take care of this and handle it as quickly as possible. And I mean, typically government moves fairly slow, I get it, but, you know, we can't just sit on this one. I know. We gotta move forward, and I think tonight is a great start to that, you know, getting something reinstituted and moving forward soon.
Chase?
Yeah, there must be a lot of cat owners in here. I'm sneezing quite a bit. I have allergies. A couple
Bob.
things. I'll keep it as brief as I can. I've spoken a lot with the amount of questions I had. First of all, I appreciate the respectful discourse that we had in here. I mean, really, that's it doesn't happen too often. You see a lot of videos out there and reports that when very passionate people come in about very sensitive issues, it doesn't tend to happen this way too often. And this is really the only way to solve challenges. Is having respectful discourse and honest debate about ideas, regardless of how outlandish they are. So my hat's off to everybody in here, as I would expected it to have been exactly as it were. The only two things that I'll reiterate. First of all, I think the manager and staff have clarity. I'm looking forward to their nuts and bolts plans. I'm fully confident in their ability to come back with us to us with some stuff, and they'll put things together. I don't want to micromanage that. I think they're very capable. The only two things that I'll remind and reiterate is the ability to have enormous accountability on each colony in the event that there is a nuisance that are that's being caused to local businesses and homeowners. I don't believe it's a homeowner's responsibility to compensate for poor management of somebody's colony. Poor planning on one person's part does not constitute inconvenience on another person's part. Now, they have to do all they can to protect their home, which they should. But I want the ability as a council to have that shut down or fined if necessary. We've heard far too many stories of folks with major harassment on their homes. That being said, the other thing to reiterate, as was also mentioned by the previous council members, is punishment to the fullest extent. Abandonment is abuse, plain and simple. I understand people fall on hard times, and I appreciate that. But we have measures in place for that. They can take them to the shelter. Leaving them to fend for themselves is not an option. So I think I spoke with Alan earlier today. He's gone somewhere else again, another seat.
What he moved to now?
I believe you recall, and our counsel can, our attorney can corroborate. I think the $5,000 was a maximum fine. That is one that I would be pressing for, frankly. That is where the problem begins, and it's the right thing to do. So I echo the sentiments of council, and thanks again for the lively and respectful discourse.
Marilyn?
I think Councilman Stiltner did an excellent job of laying out really the issues out there. On the one hand, you have the issues of managing the cat population with TNR, and then on the other hand, you have all of the things sort of outside of the colonies where you have citizens or rogue cat feeders that create a whole lot of problems and infringe on public policy. I think Dr. Milkarski has, by her map, is really showing the hot spots. And so I think the point that the Dr. Pisano made about working with the hot spots, I think some of that is laid out for us. And so I would suggest to the manager that maybe one of the things you want to think about in terms of process. That's all I've got to say at this point. I think certainly it will be a lively discussion as we get into this because the devil is in the details.
And Jake, I was going to say that if you want to come back and modify your goals that you said based on district, if you come back 5-7 years from now and we missed the goals in District A, but you made them in District B, and District B had 4 times the size of the problem, I wouldn't call that a failure.
No, oh, me neither. I
know
think.
you have to, but I do want to, we do have to have numerical
I
goals.
think from a I'm not a scientist perspective,
I think it's a good
to be able to get from 300, like I was talking to Pat a couple weeks ago, I would rather have 20 colonies with 30 cats in it than 300 colonies with 1 cat each in it. Maybe that's not the right answer, but that's what I'd rather have, because then I can send one person out to those 20 places to look at those 30 cats, all with notched ears going, "We're still good, sir." And I can report to you, "We're still good, sir." Right now, I can't. And that's frustrated for me when you ask me, and I kind of give you, I call it the junior salute. I don't know.
Let me ask the hard question. You get a complaint from a business owner that has a large number of cats that are unwanted and you have to remove them. It seems to me that there are 2 options. One is to relocate and the other is to euthanize. What would happen? What would that look like? Neither are great options, but one is certainly a lot worse than the other. But you can't. Doing nothing is the only option you can't do.
Relocation.
Okay.
And you know, I've heard that you can't relocate cats. We had 6 cats at 3900 Halifax. We don't have 6 cats at 3900 Halifax. They were relocated. They haven't come back. We've had various other city locations where there have been feral cats. They've been trapped and relocated. They haven't come back. And where those cats were, there's no new cats there. I'm not saying that relocation doesn't work. I'm just saying when we've pulled cats out of a location and relocated them somewhere, they don't come back to the original location. So for that property owner, I can say that in the past, my experience is if I've removed these cats from your place, and if you don't put out food or allow anybody else to put out food, there's a good chance they're not going to come back. And we don't euthanize them, and we don't feed them to the coyotes or the eagles. We relocate them. They may be in another colony right now. I don't know. I just know they're not at those city locations where we remove cats and ask city people not to feed cats anymore.
How many cats have we euthanized?
We have euthanized no cats.
Okay.
We bring them to Halifax Humane Society. We pay an $88 fee. And what happens after 3 days, if they don't get adopted, they get euthanized. Well, I'm sorry. I'll let Miguel tell you what happens to them.
Okay. Make a note, because I do want that 411. I think that we're trying to react to all the issues, and TNR is just part of the problem. I mean, and Scott, when we're talking about,
It's part of the solution.
No, I mean, nobody's, yeah, thank you, part of the solution. But we're only addressing part of it because you're talking about those feral cats in those colonies. We have a lot of unwanted cats and a lot of unwanted colonies that those colonies can't continue where they are under some of the direction that we've given you
Right.
as far as.
I think, Mayor, the biggest dent, and you all have talked to it or around it, the biggest dent is the human issue piece, not the cat issue piece. And that's the easiest for me to solve, because cats don't read ordinances, but humans do. And if they don't, we'll make sure they do when they're in court. And cats, you know, I think the TNR program and CCFAW can take care of the cats. Oh, and by the way, they can help us with the human problem too. But for the big human problems, we're gonna put some things in place that I would not, by the way, I would not expect any volunteer organization working outside the umbrella of the city to be responsible for.
And we were talking about law enforcement piece, that, no, I wouldn't expect a volunteer to be responsible.
Or the you know, the church piece mentioned above. If there's two churches out there that don't want cats in their church, I would hope that the volunteer organizations would help us get those cats off that property, or convince the property owners that that's the best place for those cats. I don't have the psychology to get them there. I'm like, I got a problem, help me solve it, and that's what we'll use CCFAW. But if the property owner doesn't want the cats there, that's when I think we can come in and solve that problem,
We'll just
and still protect the cats.
We're just shifting a second to the issue of communication and our public efforts. I mean, certainly there are things that we can control with our own social media and our website and the like, but it seems to me we need to, when it comes to renters, we need to reach out with information that large apartment complexes can use.
So one of the things that I've determined is that our public information, public education, I hate using the term education because it makes it sound like the public's uneducated. They're not. But inform them, including me, tomorrow when I go to get my cat registered, is let them know everything that's available. We'll go to family days. We'll go to the spring festival. We'll put out information on our website. We'll spend some money on flyers. We'll get it out every way we can. We've already enlisted the help of the big commercial business owners of the malls and the commercial areas.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if there's a guy that's scooping them up and buying them right now. He's like, I don't want feral cats on my properties, and I will let all my tenants know as soon as I close on the property. So he's letting his tenants know no feral cats. So they're probably going to call us or call CCFAW and say, I got a problem. I can't have this colony anymore. You need to help me. And we need to get those cats off those properties. And I'm not sure if the Panera location or the Target location is one of them, but we'll have to go around and check with all those people and make sure that A, they're aware, and B, they want them. If they want them, they can have them. It's just like humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can trespass people. We can trespass cats pretty much.
It seems that certainly when we get a finished product with stiffened ordinances on whether it be feeding or animal abandonment,
Right.
or the like, as we stiffen those ordinances, it seems like we have friendly members of the media that will help us get the word out, right?
At least one, right?
At least one. We should be reaching out to all our partners.
Yep.
To do that. Okay. What do we need to do next, Jake? What do you need from us?
I've got some broad guidance, and I'm assuming that CCFAW will still have us and we'll work on a relationship. Pat, please tell me if that's to the contrary, but.
Saw that, Bob.
Shaky? Got it. Got it. Training, public education, strong ordinance. We'll come back to you with in-source, outsource. Stiff penalties for abandonment. No colonies on public property to include schools. And we'll give you the details of the program based on that. Share with you the cost. We'll give you the full Monty cost of insourcing and kind of a stair-step plan of cost deductions. If you don't, kind of like the budget. If you don't want this, then you'll save that much. If you don't want this, they'll save that much, and go from there. And we'll take a look. We'll talk to the professionals from Jacksonville and UF. Stay in touch with Miguel and CCFAW, and grant money, obviously. And there was one other thing. I'll think about it later, but we'll have a strong plan for you.
Can you also include, Jake, what we spent on it in previous years like this year, last year, just a comparison as much.
Sure, I think we've already got that, so yeah, we'll provide that.
What we got and what it cost us. Okay.
Keeping in mind that this would be a budget resolution, right? Because it's not currently budgeted.
Indeed. Miguel, you want to give us any additional guidance, or just certainly, I know that you'll be probably hearing from our staff as we have questions, but if you could help us put a bow on it for the evening.
I will, happily. And one of the ways I wanted to do that is to be a little comical, but at the same time kind of harness this in, because there's a lot of dichotomies, different discussions that we're having, and we're forgetting the foundation of some principles in animal welfare management in cats. You know, when we're talking about things like toxoplasmosis, you have to consume the feces. I'm not in the habit of consuming feces. It's really hard to enforce abandonment. You have to kind of hide behind a tree and wait to see somebody throw puppies out a window. Otherwise, there's not witnesses, folks like that will come forward in those kind of cases. Take it from somebody who was in law enforcement for 7 years that loves animals.
I've got some ideas on that, though.
Sure.
Trust me, we've been talking about it.
By all means, but
stay tuned on that.
Thank you. By all means, and you won't get any resistance from me on stiffening any ordinance that helps protect animals, but ultimately, you know, as I was walking in here, I saw that you guys had a sign out there that says, you know, be careful with the aggressive hawks, and I thought, well, what are you guys doing to manage the hawks? And it dawned on me that the reality of it is with all these dichotomies, all these distractions, the reality of it is we're forgetting the basic principles of cats. You know, cats kind of tend to go wherever they want. You know this. You may have the friendliest cat in the world, but when he's done with you petting him, he's going to walk elsewhere. On top of that, they're really, really crafty. You know, I've been talking to Cameron, and she shared with me the story of a cat that comes to her porch and probably gets lunch from her neighbor and dinner from the other neighbor and dinner from another neighbor, and everybody actually thinks they own this cat. And that is exactly what a cat is. So when we're talking about things like property rights, it's just so much simpler if you think about cats, whether feral or friendly or whatever they may be, as community cats. And we start looking at this as something that, yes, it is a man-made issue, but it's also an issue that we have to look at, just like we see seagulls in establishments on the beach, just like an issue with hawks sitting outside of City Hall. It's an issue that, though it's a man-made problem, we have to have a multifaceted solution that addresses the problem without the distractions around it. And of course, I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Pisano because she can talk a lot better to the science of it than I can.
And I'll just take a few minutes to address all the concerns that you have. And
a few seconds?
Did I say seconds? I meant another hour and a half.
I won't be here.
Seriously, because we all have the same goals. This is not a free-for-all for cats. So to answer your question, no, when there are cats on somebody's business property, no, that is at the discretion of the property owner. Absolutely. And that's when, you shouldn't have to get involved because the property owner should be giving permission or not. With respect to our own homes, I'm a homeowner. I'm obviously an animal lover and a cat lover. I have issued, South Florida is overrun with iguanas right now and probably forever, and only getting worse and causing incredible damage. I have to take steps in my own yard to plant different things. Succulents, for example. You heard about my raccoon issue. So yes, our homes, I don't want a cat spraying on my property ever. And so I may have to take action to prevent that from happening. And when we're talking about not returning cats because someone is complaining, I urge you to capitalize on Cameron Moore, the #1 expert. 30,000 plus cats have gone through her program, and cats were returned whether somebody said, oh, I thought they were lost, or I don't want them on my property. But the point is Cameron took the time to say, tell me what the problem is, and that's what Bob does. So that's the point. But I think overarching, you're missing the global scope of this. You're thinking only about ferals and colonies. The 16,000 estimate, that's just community cats, which means friendly, going in, my cats that I let outside, or maybe they prefer to be let outside. So this is a much broader scope. And that's why I can't give you an exact dollar amount, because by the time you're trapping these cats, there's an exponential number, right? So it's about the target to those particular hot spots. With respect to parasites, number one, remember less cats, less parasites. Wildlife are also shedding parasites daily, but if who at the school is attracting those cats, a lot of times it's teachers, but that's again at the school's discretion. Playgrounds, a lot of communities that maybe they are feeding the cats, they cover the sandboxes all the time, so there's no risk to the kids, right? Because that's a natural way for cats where they're going to use the sandbox. If you take that colony away or relocate or remove the colony, again, there's homes around those schools. There's going to be cats using the sandbox, even if it's not a colony. So please broaden your scope to think this is about cats outside in this city and every city and location, not just the ferals and the colonies, but those are the hot spots you got to hit first and where you're getting the complaints, and that's where you're going to make the most progress.
Did you just suggest that teachers were?
Heck yeah, lots of teachers, principals, a lot more people love and feed cats, and they might be sneaking right out back and feeding cats. But again, the whole
When
ordinance.
are they doing that? How are they having the time to do that when they're in their classroom?
There's lots more people feeding cats than you know, and they're probably sneaking it. But again, to answer the question about the feeding and the rogue feeding, again, woven into the ordinances, I'm going to give you a copy of my book that has the legislative chapter in there with all the do's and don'ts and whys. But there's provisions in your ordinance to do that. This is about respect for everybody and all stakeholders. Did I get everybody? I think I did, right?
And I just had one last comment regarding the adoption policy at HHS. Very simple. We hold an animal for 3 days for an owner to reclaim it. Hopefully someday that will change. That's not a euthanasia policy. That's just simply the city forfeiting the ability of that owner to come reclaim the dog or cat, that animal then coming into our domicile. The city does not get charged thereafter. We make every effort to adopt an animal thereafter. However, with feral cats, they just frankly don't belong in shelters. They don't do well in shelters, they don't thrive in shelters, and you can make that argument for a lot of other animals too. So long story short, right, no community cats. So long story short, we make every effort possible, but that's one of the learning lessons for me. It has been that just community cats don't belong in shelters.
Is there, so, you'll follow my logic and tell me why it won't work. If we bring a cat to HHS, feral, and it's not tipped and not chipped, other than money, and maybe that's the reason, why can't you bring it to Redinger to get neutered and then call Pat or somebody to bring it back, or us to bring it back to?
Sure.
Coincidentally, we are suggesting that you do a pilot program and do just that while you revise your ordinances to allow that to happen. And it's called a really ridiculous name, return to field. It's not, you're not returning the cat to a field. You're returning it right where it
So instead of
cared
so
for.
right now, as I understand it, my ACO needs to, if they catch a cat, they need to call Pat, make an arrangement for a pickup. Pat needs to wait for a Redinger appointment, get the cat neutered, and then bring it back.
You have two things happening. You have a TNR program, so those cats are part of the program with concerned citizens and going back. The other program is your officers are bringing cats, friendly or feral, to the Humane Society, and they're on a track that don't get sterilized and returned yet, but that is the recommendation.
So you're calling that, which I'm
That's
aware of,
called
RTF.
Right, exactly. Yes,
Got it.
and that's what we're asking you
Well,
to
and
start
that's-
now, a pilot program, because you see how you're cutting your nose despite your face because
Well, that's part of
you're-
my.
Right, you're.
So why do
Yeah.
I have to have that program? Why can't I just bring it over to HHS and that program automatically
Hallelujah.
goes?
You heard it here, folks. Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's what happened in Jacksonville.
So
because
I don't understand.
You bypass.
When
yes.
the cat gets dropped off at HHS, why can't I be done with it other than it shows back up in Port Orange with a tipped ear in 3 days?
Do you want
I
to
don't.
why you're not doing
I don't.
that now?
I'm asking the person from HHS.
Right, because
because of the ordinance and the way that the contract is structured at its present place. We have been recommending
Our contract.
Correct. No, your ordinance.
Our ordinance, got it. Good.
And our contract reflects your ordinance.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's good news.
And our red line to freeze, so it's all legal.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
That sounds like
That's-
something that can be,
That's easy for me.
there you go. Okay, great.
Well, I say easy. Government easy.
Right.
Thanks for the specific, being specific. about it.
Miguel, I just saw this in the mail the other day, the annual mailer that HHS sends out for donations. And so what percentage of those donations go towards TNR programs?
So the Redinger Clinic is a program of its own, and it fundraises as a program for its own, of its own. People can appoint whatever kind of donations they want at Halifax Humane Society to whatever kind of program that we have. I would tell you that I don't know the exact slice of the pie that goes towards spay-neuter, but I can tell you that it is one of our major programs.
So if something that we look at down the road to maybe endorse or encourage folks in Port Orange specifically that get that annually to say, hey, mark on there, you want this to go towards TNR programs for cats from Port Orange. That's something that can be done, and that money will specifically go only towards.
I'm not in the business of earmarking for specific jurisdictions. That can cause a little bit of administrative nightmare for us. I would encourage you guys to do it. Plus, consider the fact that my job is fundraising for Halifax Humane Society, and we do a really good job at lowering that cost. I trust you me, the cost of a cat surgery is not $45. So we're already subsidizing that through our donations. My suggestion to you would be make it free by subsidizing the other $45, $60, or take some of the burden off of that, specifically for low-income folks, targeted folks, whatever it is you may choose. That would be my suggestion.
By the way, that is something else that I took away that I didn't mention earlier, the targeted subsidizing. You know, a person that makes a little bit of money can probably pay for their own neuter.
Right, but thank you for bringing that up so that the TNR is effective, the return to feel is effective, but nothing will get you the biggest bang for the buck as doing both. And that's what I hope you're on the brink of doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Scott, sir, did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, yeah, it did. I saw that the other day, and I knew you'd be here tonight, and so I thought I would ask, because obviously, no matter, as we move forward in this, there's going to be a huge price tag. I mean, from a little bit of the takeaway between your comments and some of the other field experts, that basically for the amount we're investing in now, we're never going to get anywhere. Right? Fair to say?
Fair to say.
So it's either don't do anything at all, or we've got to find a way to significantly increase the amount of money that's got to come from the taxpayers. And so how does that, you know, what does that look like, and how do we get there with that? But so I was just curious what other avenues might be out there, and whether that's Humane Society raising funds for that, TCFAW raising funds, other nonprofits raising funds, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I get there's a lot of people that put a lot of their own money into it already, but at the end of the day, you know, when we do budget every single year, there's a line item, and taxpayers don't like tax increases.
I agree.
So anyway,
I see that gavel
that's a
coming
whole
down,
nother
so
that's
thank
a whole
you.
nother discussion.
I'd like
One
to,
sentence.
I'd like to follow up just briefly. Somebody mentioned earlier $4 million raised. I'd be
Yes,
curious
that's what
as
I
to
was
where
going
that
to
came
talk
from.
about. So that's just Cameron and I working with shelters and pitching funders or national funders and philanthropists know about our work. And so we advocate for the shelters that we help. In Northern Kentucky alone, we've raised over $1 million in 8 counties in Northern Kentucky, ended euthanasia's population control over the last 4 years. That was from one private philanthropy foundation, but there are many more grants than were mentioned tonight, and we've been very instrumental in helping communities get that, and especially a community like yours that is having all these issues and deciding what to do. A lot of our funder partners really like to help communities like yours, so we're committed to help you raise money for that privately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Jake, at the risk of adding any more time, since we've been sitting here for 4 hours almost, I need you to recap what our instructions and what your mission is. I want to make sure that we are clear and that these 4 hours were well spent, so that we're not back here with any misunderstandings.
We're going to stick with the TNR program. We're going to work to reduce feral cat colony numbers. We're going to provide in-house training for colony owners, if you will. We're going to beef up our ordinance to take care of penalties for abandonment, colony locations, or locations where you can't have colonies. A sliding fee for TNR, if I can fit that in, if it needs to go in the ordinance. If RTF needs to be addressed, we'll address RTF in the ordinance. I already said stiff penalties for abandonment, no colonies in public property, which we really don't need that in the ordinance. I can just make that happen. And then from a program standpoint, metrics, accountability, and things like I think Chase mentioned it, shut down or fined if the colony's not run right. The ordinance will also include penalties for rogue feeders and whatnot.
We've given you an awful lot of work to do, and I also recognize that we've heard very little from the city attorney, but he's going to have an awful lot to do as well, so we appreciate that as well. I think that pretty much sums up our wishes as expressed this evening. Council, does anybody else have to add before I drop the gavel? Because we will be revisiting this again as soon as you tell us that we are ready with all that.
Sir, I think, I don't want to call it an olive branch, but I think one of the things we need to do, and I'll call Pat and the doctor next week if that's okay, but I'd like to look at a budget appropriation of some certain small amount at least to get the TNR thing started again, just to get us to keep our foot in the door. TNR or RTF or a little bit of both. What I'd like to do is earmark a little bit of money to start getting Redinger moving again, and keep our relationship from atrophying any more than it has here the past few months. It won't be a lot, but it'll be a start.
I want to thank everybody this evening. It's been a long evening, and a lot of us worked hard all day before we came here to spend this very long evening. Some of us got up pretty early, but there is a lot of passion in this room. There is a lot of desire in this room, and hopefully we can I hope that we are headed in the right direction. We obviously don't have a finished product yet, but I've got a feeling that we've made a lot of progress tonight, and I appreciate you all coming out tonight. Have a good evening.